Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1556 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news coming out of Iran and coming out of Russia as well. We have just gotten word just about an hour or two ago that U.S. forces have ordered ships to evacuate near the Strait of Hormuz, impending imminent military operations, they say. We're also hearing that a top Iranian military official is apparently dead near Qeshm Island from allegedly shrapnel, and also a top Russian official, the lunatic Medvedev, has basically declared war on Europe today. So we have very big news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments, primarily within the Middle East, of action to come, and in Europe of action that has passed and is to follow. We have been able to hear significant developments from the area of the Strait of Hormuz that the United States of America's armed forces have issued an open letter to the entirety of the area and commercial ships within the region that they must avoid the Strait of Hormuz in the next coming days, as the United States of America will be preparing and then commencing military operations against the Islamic Republic of Iran to forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz. We are not entirely sure how accurate this information will be and whether the United States is going to be backing off of this statement at the moment right now, as the U.S. has also announced the end of the blockade as of today in a statement that was made by the President of the United States, meaning that right now the blockade on the blockade no longer exists. It's just the Iranian blockade, and apparently the U.S. may intend to physically clear it and finally reopen the strait through military force. At the same time, air defense fire and drone debris were seen around the area of Qeshm Island, and the IRGC has also reported that an Iranian lieutenant apparently got blitzed by some shrapnel somewhere on the island in the midst of this ongoing air defense scenario. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the Iranians have continued to reiterate that they are still controlling the strait, and that their control will remain uncontested, and any vessels that attempt to challenge that control will be met by the full force of the IRGC and its forces forces within the region, while simultaneously it does appear that an MQ-9 Reaper was shot down over the Houthi lands of western Yemen over the course of the day as well. Israel is continuing to see that casualties are mounting due to the FPV drone attacks that have been conducted by Hezbollah within the southern area of Lebanon under Israeli occupation, and Hezbollah rocket attacks have also attempted to hit Kiryat Shimona, which is one of the largest cities within the state of Israel along the Lebanese border. We've also been able to hear that the Romanian situation has started to become quite interesting over the course of this day, and we have seen that the Russian Federation, in some words, have stated that they are in an open state of war with the European Union and NATO at large, and in other words, by people in other parts of the Russian government, have denied that the drone was even theirs, although the evidence and proof on the ground shows undeniably that it was a Russian Guran 2 FPV or kamikaze drone. At the moment, we have seen that the Romanians have attempted to make some form of a response by declaring the Russian consulate in the city of Constanta persona non grata, giving them a very short period of time to vacate the country, and the president of Romania has also issued a fairly lengthy statement as well today, largely condemning the action that was conducted on their soil by the Russian Federation. However, we have not seen that the Romanian government has moved forward with declaring an Article 4 convention under the NATO Charter, and we've also seen that it appears that they are putting the entire responsibility of a legitimate response to the Russian Federation on the NATO alliance and its framework instead of a national response and then attempting to bring in NATO as a result. We have seen that Peter Pavel, the Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia, has openly stated that he is in support of the Romanians and believes that there should be a significant international response, which appears to be some of the first murmurs of a larger response or coalition to respond within the European Union, but we've not seen any further actions beyond this point, at least at the moment. It may be that they're trying to figure out what to do at this time, or they have decided that this is about all that they're willing to do, and therefore the activity is going to be quite small. Meanwhile, Ukrainian armed forces have conducted a significant drone attack once again against the deep heartland of the Russian Federation, striking the refinery of Volgograd, and we've also seen an ammo depot somewhere in the Ural Mountains go near nuclear today, near to a small village, after some sort of a spontaneous combustion, which we believe was not even caused by a Ukrainian drone. In the midst of this, the Russian Federation has also stated that they have no clue when the war in Ukraine is going to be ending at this point. Several weeks ago or several months ago, they were saying that the war would probably end in the next 3 to 4 years. Now the Russian Federation, through the President Vladimir Putin, has stated that they have absolutely no concept at this point as to when the war in Ukraine could end, and it could go on indefinitely from this point. We've also seen that in the meantime, the Ukrainian armed forces have been causing irreparable damage to Russian supply lines once again, and desperate calls from the Russian army in the southern front are still echoing through the halls of the Kremlin as they are stating that they are running out of supplies and vital munitions to even be able to hold down the front at a minimum. Fuel shortages are now gripping the entire region as well, also affecting the Russian army, as fuel queues are now lining up at quite literally every area of the region, including the occupied areas of Zaporizhia, Kherson, and the entirety of the Crimean Peninsula. The Russian Federation did conduct an attack against a Turkish cargo ship attempting to reach a Ukrainian port over the course of the night, and we've also been able to confirm that the Ukrainian armed forces did successfully land a hit on the Admiral Essen, a fairly large frigate of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet, within the Vostochny Rayon in their last attacks in Novorossiysk, with clear and evident proof coming out today. We've also been able to hear additionally that the Bulgarians are going to be expelling U.S. forces coming up this June from the territory of Bulgaria, and we've also been able to get some further news of Cuban developments over the course of the day and some news from within the United States of America. But with all of that out of the way, we have to cover all of this news and all of the other stories that we have for the night, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And I have to tell y'all, folks, that we have an absolutely humongous amount of news today, and quite a great deal of potential possibilities of what is to come, and things that have certainly come to pass already. Moving us on and into the area of the Strait of Hormuz and things to come, at least as we're hearing them right now, we have seen that the United States of America has officially issued a letter within the area to all commercial vessels that are near to the Strait of Hormuz, either within the Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Oman, as they are currently sitting at anchor. A video did come out today showing us some of these merchant ships as they are moored off of the coast of Oman in the UAE, waiting for their eventual passage through the area. I won't be able to show you all the entirety of the clip as it is copyright, but you can see a large amount of vessels here at their anchorages on both sides of the Strait of Hormuz. If we look at marine traffic tracking data, you can actually see these larger anchorages, particularly these right here around the area of Fujairah and also within the very middle of the entrance of the Strait of Hormuz, waiting for their eventual time to pass. We can also see some larger anchorages as well in large groups of ships throughout the entirety of the Persian Gulf, as they all are as well at the same time waiting for the Strait of Hormuz to eventually be reopened for passage to resume. Currently, global oil markets are incredibly unstable due to political statements from the President of the United States, and also due to the uncertainty as to whether or not the Strait of Hormuz will really ever truly be opened, and that ships will be resuming normal passages by over 100 a day throughout this area. The U.S. has put out this statement today, which appears to be pertaining to the situation and imminent action. This statement was put out by U.S. NAVCENT NCAGS on the 29th of May, 2026, which is today, stating there will be military operations north of the Musandam Peninsula, military operations north of the Musandam Peninsula area of Oman. Military operations will be conducted within the area north of the Musandam Peninsula in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran continues to attempt illegal control of the Strait of Hormuz to include dangerous and illegal mining that places ships and mariners at risk. The United States is committed to freedom of navigation. As a result, the U.S. Navy's Central Command is providing notice to mariners and airmen that dangerous military activities will be taking place. Action. All mariners are advised to avoid the traffic separation scheme of the SOH, coordinate transit of U.S. naval cooperation and guidance for shipping NCAGS, maintain continuous watch on VHF Channel 16, comply immediately with instructions from U.S. forces, navigate in accordance with COREGs, and additional warning, Iran continues to attempt to impede mine clearance and safe transit of the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. forces operating in the Strait of Hormuz are on high alert for Iranian attack. Vessels are advised to follow the direction of U.S. forces. Any vessels that do not comply with the direction of U.S. forces may be determined an imminent threat and subject to proportionate measure of self-defense in accordance with international law. Any vessel observed to be engaged in or supporting mine-laying activities will be targeted by U.S. forces in self-defense. The period of time that this will lapse is until further notice. Any changes will be detailed via advisory update. The authority was given by the United States Central Command, and any questions, comments, or concerns that some may have can be directed to this specific email right here at NAVCENT NCAGS, just in case you're wondering if there's going to be a slight chance of rain with bullets in the Strait of Hormuz on the day that you attempt passage. But it does appear that this statement by U.S. NAVCENT is making it incredibly clear that they will be commencing military operations within the immediate future at this point to start clearing the Strait of Hormuz. We are not entirely sure when this will commence. We haven't seen any military actions, at least yet, by the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, which is the one that's operating within the Central Command's area of responsibility. And we've also not heard of any reports of direct armed action happening in Hormuz at all at this matter from other sources as well. We did get to hear, however, that during this time there was air defense over the island of Qeshm, with some limited footage coming out showing air defense rounds bursting in air over the island, and also the sound of them as well. Around that time, or a little while later, it's a little bit hard to ascertain on this one, but we did get to see the debris of some drone that apparently splashed down into the sea near the island of Qeshm, washing up on shore in this clip as well.
That might be one of the Reaper drones that Iran recently shot down, because they've shot down quite a few Reapers. That is something that we can confirm. I think the most recent report is Iran shot down about the equivalent of $1 billion worth of Reaper drones for surveillance, and they're just shooting those things down like they're candy at this point. So that could be what we're seeing here.
Well, we can actually see a propeller assembly right there, and I'm very certain, actually, that is probably the exhaust of an MQ-9 Reaper. And let me go and look at this here really quickly, folks, because something about this is really... Let me see here. Hold up. Let's see here. Let me pull this up. Let me see here. Maybe this one. Huh. I can't really find an exact match for that little cowling here at the very back of the propeller shaft on a Reaper or a Predator drone. So I might not be able to verify that, at least at the moment right now, but we can see the propeller shaft of whatever drone was shot down washed up on the shore right there as well, which we haven't been able to do any positive identification on, at least at the moment. We see some more debris in parts generally all washed up in this one area of the shoreline. Also got to say that that water looks exceptionally clear even in the middle of the night.
Water looks hydrating.
Man, that water looks like it would be like worthy of a good sip, but knowing how salty that water is, you definitely wouldn't want to take a sip. Also, there's a lot of oil in that stuff these days as well from all the oil tankers that have been hit. But moving us on out of that, in the midst of this air defense fire and the drone debris washing up on shore, the Iranians apparently reported in the midst of this that an Iranian lieutenant had been killed by shrapnel somewhere on the island, and apparently that's all we know. We don't know how in the hell this guy was so close to something that blew up that he sustained shrapnel injuries that were fatal, and we don't really know what exploded to cause shrapnel to go flying through the air to kill this lieutenant, but there is a report that an Iranian lieutenant did get killed on Qeshm Island by shrapnel, and beyond that, the story is entirely unclear as to what happened surrounding that incident and why that would have ever occurred on the island in the midst of everything else that's been going on so far that we've been able to confirm by video and picture evidence. Before we move on...
That's a strange idea for somebody to get killed by shrapnel, because the U.S. isn't launching bombs except for, like, what was it, 2 nights ago when they attacked the Bandar Abbas area. They launched some missiles there, but they didn't launch any today, according to what we've heard. So unless maybe the Iranians shot down one of those drones and the lieutenant was simply stupid enough to be standing underneath the wreckage of it or something, it's like, I'm not sure how somebody can get taken out by shrapnel like that.
There is a possibility, this is something that I was thinking, but I'm not entirely sure how true this could be, but a possible scenario is that when they were firing their anti-aircraft guns, one of the anti-aircraft guns, due to them being fairly worn out and being in service for decades, may have had a breach failure where the breech of the autocannon may have ruptured and exploded, and whenever that happens due to a warping or deteriorating of the metal in the breech, it largely goes off like a small bomb or a hand grenade and sends scalding hot shrapnel flying throughout the area, most likely into the crew, which could end up injuring or killing a good amount of them, especially if there's a critical failure like that. That's a possibility. I see some people in the chat saying that the guy might have been fragged. There's always a possibility that the guy could get fragged, but I would have to say I generally think it might have been an AA breach failure more so than a fragging. That's just at least my opinion. But I mean, who knows? We don't really have an answer at the moment. So maybe the guy got fragged, maybe he got greased, or maybe it was a breach failure. It's just really hard to say at the moment. But before we move on into the rest of the news that we have been able to get out of this area in the Strait of Hormuz, because we have a lot more major developments that have come out today beyond the statement that was put out by U.S. NAVCEN. A lot of people are talking about this letter that was issued today of imminent military operations that are going to be conducted by the U.S. Armed Forces under the Central Command's area of responsibility within the Strait of Hormuz, which sounds to be preparing for the clearing of the Strait, at least from how the letter was written and issued today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so the warning that was sent out just a couple hours ago by U.S. Central Command is telling the vessels in the Strait of Hormuz to be careful and basically get out of the area completely, and also comply with any instructions that U.S. forces give to the vessels in a very quick fashion, because they're saying, and this is literally the first sentence of the actual notice, it says, military operations will be conducted within the area north of the peninsula in the Strait of Hormuz. So that's very clear. They're saying a military operation will be beginning very soon. And this is the first warning going out to vessels to get out of the area before they get hit in the midst of that operation. So what do you think's about to happen? 61% said a military operation is imminent, while 21% said it sounds like a scare tactic, and the U.S. is putting this out to simply scare the Iranians into believing that a military operation is imminent, and 13% said it's just a warning of existing actions that the U.S. is already taking. So specifically in the notice, it says a military operation, and it also says any vessel observed to be engaged in mine-laying activities will be targeted by U.S. forces. So we generally haven't seen the U.S. target the mosquito boats, as some people call them. We really haven't seen that so far. We hit 2 of them yesterday, but that's one of the first instances that I know so far that the U.S. has actually hit those vessels directly. So I would say, to me, it sounds like something is imminent. I'm with the 61%. They would not send this notice out and also radio to these vessels in the area unless they intended to do something. This would be kind of crazy to send something like that out for a scare tactic. So I'm with the 61%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd agree with 61% as well. This letter is written quite clearly to suggest that imminent military action is going to commence within the near future. If we read this right here, it states, the period is until further notice. the authorities by U.S. Central Command, and that they are going to be giving notice that dangerous military activities will be taking place. What dangerous military activities could be taking place inside of the Strait of Hormuz by an armed force outside of armed action? There can be none. So for that reason, with the letter being written quite clearly and obviously, there's really no doubt or question about it. Whatever is about to happen, there's about to be a significant amount of action taking place in the Strait of Hormuz by U.S. armed forces, and I would hope and I would pray that it is a full-on attempt to break the blockade that the Iranians have right now, because anything less will be achieving generally nothing in the strategic outlook, and will also be seeing that the United States will continue to deal with the economic calamities that we're finding ourselves to deal with on the worse and worse month by month at the moment right now. In the meanwhile, outside of all of this that's been going on with that letter issued today by U.S. NAVCENT, we've also been able to hear that apparently a statement by the President of the United States was made today about the situation of the U.S. blockade and other matters pertaining to the situation with Iran, which is as follows. Iran must agree that they will never have nuclear weapon or bomb. The Hormuz Strait must be immediately open, no tolls, no unrestricted shipping traffic in both directions. All water mines, bombs, if any, will be terminated. We have removed through detonation numerous such mines with our great underwater minesweepers. Iran will complete the immediate removal and or detonation of any mines that are left, which will not be many. Which we'll get to that here in a second. Ships caught in the Strait due to our amazing and unprecedented naval blockade, which will now be lifted, may start the process of heading home. Say hello to your wives, husbands, parents, and families from me, your favorite president. The enriched material, sometimes referred to as nuclear dust, which is buried deep underground with virtually collapsed mountains caused by our powerful B-2 bomber attack 11 months ago, sitting on top of it, will be unearthed by the United States, which it is agreed is the only country along with China with the mechanical capability of doing so, in close coordination and conjunction with the Islamic Republic of Iran, plus the International Atomic Energy Agency, and destroyed. No money will be exchanged until further notice. Other items of far less importance have been agreed to. I'll be meeting now in the Situation Room to make a final determination. Thank you for your attention to this matter. If you would like, please leave a survey by pressing the link below.
Yeah, how are you interpreting that, by the way? Because I was going over this earlier in the short war video. The way I interpret this, the way he's worded it in this post, is that the U.S. is going to preemptively lift the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, start letting the vessels, the commercial vessels of all type, go through, and they're going to expect that because they do that, it's basically like a goodwill gesture, that maybe the Iranians will agree to the terms they laid out at the very first part of the post, but it sounds like we're preemptively lifting the blockade on our end. That's what it sounds like to me.
It sounds to me like it's being lifted right now. It says which will now be lifted. It doesn't say anything about, it will be lifted once the Iranians do this, that, or the other. This is just saying it's going to be lifted. So it sounds like the U.S. blockade has ended today. The one that was supposed to, by the way, bring Iran to its knees and force them to achieve, reach all of our demands. They haven't done that yet, and we're already ending the blockade, so it looks like it didn't really achieve anything. But it sounds to me like the wordage is pretty clear. Ships caught in the Strait, due to the blockade, which will now be lifted, may start the process of heading home. There really isn't any stipulations to that. It's made as a clear statement of they can start leaving and heading to wherever they came from today.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like they're lifting it right now, which makes me wonder, at this point, like for example, Operation Freedom or whatever that operation was called, where we were escorting the commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz using the U.S. naval vessels, which is in dispute, by the way. Some people say that they never did it and they simply just told the ships to go through. We don't even know the details about that, but we backed off of that operation at the request of Pakistan, they say. Now we're backing off the U.S. blockade at the request of nobody, apparently. Apparently the U.S. just decided to do that without the request of Pakistan. So I don't know. Like, it seems like an odd thing to do because they were swearing that if they keep the U.S. blockade up in the Strait, that Iran would come crashing down. Now apparently we're lifting it, and we're expecting Iran to play ball at this point because we're lifting it. I'm not really sure what the thought process is behind that.
Well, I would have to say that if we're correct that the blockade was lifted today, then generally I think we can kind of get an idea, folks, that specifically my analysis of the blockade on the blockade, and also Matthew's, because we agreed on this both when this started, was completely pointless because it hasn't really achieved anything. Because I remember, just to put this out there, everybody, because we always have to make sure to keep the stories straight here, because the story changes, especially by this guy, literally every day, that when the blockade was announced, it was announced with the concept publicly that this would bring Iran to its knees so fast it would make everybody's head spin, they would economically implode, the Islamic regime would somehow magically be overthrown in that process, and we would win the war. The Islamic regime has not been overthrown. Economically, they're not doing great, but they weren't doing great before the war either. And now the blockade's ended, and we haven't achieved a single thing that the blockade was started to reach, at least according to the public goals that were stated. So if we were waiting for this blockade to do anything over 2 months, it achieved absolutely nothing. Another thing that
Yeah.
ano-
It really achieved actually nothing. Like it legitimately did not. And I think the U.S. might have realized that Iran was doing ship-to-ship transfers to get their oil out to export the oil out of the Strait, because that was a trick that Iran was doing the entire time, according to what I've heard. They were simply taking their sanctioned Iranian vessels. They were docking up in the middle of the Persian Gulf with other vessels that weren't sanctioned. They were transferring the Iranian oil to a non-sanctioned vessel, and then they were allowed to go straight out of the Strait of Hormuz, past the U.S. blockade, to go sell their oil. So, like you just said, like we've been saying for some time, the naval blockade on the U.S. side of things was never going to work. That was just a silly power move that the U.S. tried to pull, just to say that they were the ones controlling the situation, when in actuality, it achieved literally nothing.
Also, I have to say that the statement that came before this is clearly markedly false from many logical premises, and there's no way that this can even be taken seriously. And I'll reread it here really quickly and then break it down. All water mines, which are sea mines, by the way, if any, will be terminated. We have removed through detonation numerous such mines with our great underwater minesweepers. Iran will complete the immediate removal and or detonation of any mines that are left, which will not be many. I have to ask the obvious question. If we are able to demine the Strait on our own, and we've done so well, the best that's ever been seen in history, we've done so well that the fish and the whales have had to call the president up and tell him how good of a job that they've done with demining. Literally nothing's ever been seen like this, and the demining operation's only this good because he's in charge of it. Why the hell would we need the Iranians to come out and demine the rest of them that are there? We could just do that on our own and just, completely circumvent the Iranians and having to hamstring and fiddle fart with them to figure out if they would come out and blow up or demine the rest of them. The reality of it is, folks, is that unlike the statements by the president, we actually know a little bit about the demining systems that the U.S. military has, and we have no demining systems or autonomous underwater vehicles that are known to the public right now that are capable of demining or detonating mines at this moment. So all of our underwater autonomous vehicles can find the mines, but they can't detonate them and explode them. So this statement is markedly false by many different parameters. There are still hundreds of mines out there in the Strait, and we're going to have to eventually demine them, but not with the drones, and we haven't even gotten close to starting that right now. If we had, I think the IRGC would probably notice that by now, the fact that there are literally explosions coming from the minefield that they laid, that they're observing on the daily, and firing at anyone who gets close to the thing. That's my 2 cents on it. But a lot of people currently are talking about the upcoming situation that we're seeing right now with the United States announcing that the blockade that the U.S. is conducting, that blockaded the Iranian blockade, is going to turn the situation around. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so what do you think about the whole situation? Because it sounds like the U.S. is lifting the blockade in Strait of Hormuz before Iran even agrees to any of our terms that we're laying out, like, for example, the nuclear issue or relinquishing control of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. is just preemptively lifting that, I think, in the hopes that Iran comes to their senses, which is, that's quite a leap of faith, I would say. But what are your thoughts? 27% said the U.S. will not lift the blockade and it's just a ruse. 34% said that's bad, a deal is clearly needed first, and 26% said that's good, it is better this way. And folks, I think that we need a deal first before we do something like this. First of all, I didn't think the blockade was going to work, and it appears to be that it didn't work, and that's why they're lifting it out of the blue like this. So that seems to confirm that analysis. But since they did the blockade, I mean, if we were going to use that as leverage, it seems like a deal would have been nice to get first before they lifted it. Otherwise, the trouble was all for nothing. So I would say generally, honestly, the blockade was pointless to begin with, so it's kind of hard to even work with that premise. But under the premise that the blockade was somehow going to be effective, I would say that the deal was needed first before we lifted it. So I'm with the 35%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I'm with the 35%. This is clearly a bad move. A deal is needed first before any pressure is lifted, because lifting any pressure in the midst of what is still largely a wartime scenario to try and achieve anything in negotiations is clearly unfounded and is not going to be achieving much of anything. So I would have to say that it's a pretty bad idea. It's a very bad approach, and we're probably going to see nothing beneficial coming out of this at any point here in the immediate future. I've seen some people make a good point, though, in the chat that maybe they're ending the blockade to divert these destroyers towards military action to clear the Strait. Maybe. But I have a feeling that if that was the case, that would more so be publicly stated that we're ending the blockade to forcibly reopen the Strait because the Iranians can't be trusted. Because right now, before people say, well, they're wanting to hide that so that way the Iranians don't know, they just put out a letter in the Strait of Hormuz to all the ships in the area that they're going to blow the shit up out of Iran. So if they're trying to hide the fact that they're about to blow up Iran, they're not really doing that good of a job at that, with the whole classified side of things. And also, another thing that I got to say really quickly, because I saw a lot of people saying, well, clearly the president knows more about you than demining. But yeah, hasn't he also said that we blew up all of their surface-to-air missile defense systems, and then we had to blow up a couple of those in Bandar Abbas over the last few days? According to the president, literally all of those were vaporized in the first phase of the armed conflict. But somehow they have enough of them that they fired off surface-to-air missiles near Jam in the Bushehr region, and not only that, they also had surface-to-air missile defense systems to threaten U.S. forces that CENTCOM admitted we blew up around Bandar Abbas. So maybe the president's statements don't need to be taken as 100% truth, because we have plenty of examples at this point of endless amounts of untruths that have been made by the president that we can't work with whatsoever, because it's literally living in a false reality, which would be called, I believe, at some point, a mental illness if we were all to live in a reality that's not real.
You're talking in circles, man. You're talking in absolute circles right now. You know why? Because you're trying to make sense of something that makes no sense. I mean, what are we working with here, folks? I mean, I see some people in the chat saying, what is this, like Groundhog Day? We're hearing like the same thing over again, like it's in a circle. I mean, that's what we have to work with, folks. This is what we have to work with. We have the lion-ass Iranians who lie through their teeth about everything. And then we have the U.S. out here, like, I'm not even sure if the U.S. is trying to lie because it's malicious. I think there's lying because they're not sure what the hell they are supposed to know either. So between the two, all we know is this. They say a military operation is imminent in Hormuz, so we'll have to see what happens with that. And outside of that, everything else is just circular, crazy talk at this point. So we'll just have to see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to see, but generally... And I see, folks, so many people are irate. How dare you say that the president isn't correct about the mines being cleared? Well, I mean, if they're clear like he said, and there's hardly any of them left, I mean, why not just start sending oil tankers through there right now? Prove me wrong. Start sending them through. I mean, if we're truly so in control of the situation right now, why is not a single oil tanker going through that strait? That seems to be kind of defeating the whole story that the president's entirely right, because if the president's right, Iran literally doesn't even have a military right now, which certainly isn't true, because if they didn't, nobody would consider them threatening enough to not go through the strait. Nobody's gone through the strait in a couple of months, and if the president's right and the minefield's almost completely gone and we basically remotely blown up the whole thing already, why the hell do we even need to go negotiate with Iran to reopen it? They have no hand. They don't even have any way to keep the strait closed at that point, because the minefield's gone, and we would be able to blow up any of their surface anti-ship threats that they have on shore. So clearly all those statements are completely untrue, because if you use your brain and, you click around the gears, I know some people, have gotten brain rotted, so it would be kind of hard to get that going. But if you click all the gears together, clearly none of that can be true. But moving us on from that, we have been able to hear some other news as well. According to the Iranians, and I want to make this clear that according to the Iranians this is the case, but the U.S. has adamantly denied that this was ever proposed. But according to the Iranians, the U.S.-Iran peace deal included a $300 billion construction fund for the Iranians. The program is being called an International Investment Fund, which the U.S. would facilitate in the final deal. This comes as Iran demands reparations to end the war. From what we've heard, the U.S. has adamantly denied that this was ever proposed, but the Iranians appear insistent at this point that this was proposed or is being heavily considered at this point in the negotiations, which we're not really sure which one is telling the truth. Still, this doesn't sound that good because we spent $120 billion on Ukraine. If you look at it as money spent to give them old equipment we were about to destroy anyways. We spent $120 billion on Ukraine in about 3 years. And if this was actually true, we're about to give $300 billion to Iran because we fought them for about 2 months straight and then ended up being in this weird ceasefire limbo for another 2.
I don't buy this for a second. This is something that the Iranians are lying about. I don't buy this. There's no way that this administration is going to give out $300 billion to the Iranians for some reconstruction fund. That's I'll call bogus on that one.
I have a feeling that that's probably bogus, but we have to report it, folks, because these days we never know with the talks what is true or not, so we have to give it its fair due of reporting it. But once again, folks, the Iranians do lie out their teeth, just like the U.S. government. This might be entirely, unabasedly untrue. But moving us on out of that, we've also been able to hear that apparently at the same time, the Department of the Treasury, in this incredibly long and lengthy letter, of which the text font is so small I can hardly read it, has apparently implemented new sanctions and blacklisted global networks that impersonated American small businesses to supply the Iranian military. So we do understand that some additional sanctions have been leveraged today against the Islamic Republic of Iran at this moment to be able to try and slow down some of the arms provisions, most likely in small arms, to the IRGC and their forces. We've also been able to additionally hear that in the Situation Room meeting today, apparently the president is trying to make a final determination on a tentative Iran deal concluded after roughly 2 hours. We did get to see some footage earlier in the day, which I did follow this, of General Kane walking out of the White House 2 hours after the meeting, which appeared to have been showing that it had concluded, but we're not entirely sure what the final decision was. One thing I will tell you, though, is that the U.S. NAVCENT letter did come out after that meeting, which may be giving us an idea that the decision for further combat actions has been made. It's just that it hasn't been disclosed to the public. Moving us on out of that bit of news and on to the Iranian side, the Iranians have also been running their mouths quite a lot today as well, with MB Ghalibaf, who appears to be a fairly prominent Iranian government official, stating the following on Twitter today. 1. We seize concessions not through dialogue, but with missiles. In negotiations, we merely make them understand. 2. We have no trust in guarantees or words. Only actions are the measure. No action will be taken before the other side acts. 3. The winner of any agreement is the one who is better prepared for war from the day after.
Yeah, the Iranians, man, I'll tell you what, as peaceful as a bull, the Iranians are, honestly, at this point. I mean, this is absurd to put a statement out like this. Like, this guy right here is the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, by the way. That's who MB Ghalibaf is inside the Iranian government. So he holds quite a bit of power in their parliament. So for a guy like that to come out and make a statement talking about he negotiates with missiles and bombs, it's like, that is crazy talk. It's like, are we expecting to negotiate with that? And obviously the answer to that's no. That's why we're not getting anywhere.
I would have to agree. These are kind of the reasons why we are getting nowhere, and this is why talks are pointless. Whether the U.S. government will ever get that idea or not, we're not entirely sure, but clearly talks are pointless with a group of people who think like this. Moving us on out of that, though, we've also been able to hear another statement from the Iranians today that apparently they're stating that the president is fabricating key deal terms, this is according to the Iranians, saying provisions on the Strait of Hormuz and nuclear dismantlement do not exist in the text. Iran demands $12 billion in frozen assets unblocked and a Lebanon ceasefire on Hezbollah's terms before talks proceed. Deal still awaiting final Iranian approval. Sources cited by Fars calls the president's claims a mix of truth and fabrication to declare a premature victory. Which at this point I have to say is kind of obvious because, we've been watching, people from the White House say that a deal is hours away every day for weeks, and, clearly a couple of weeks is longer than a few hours, and we haven't seen a deal made yet, so I'd actually have to believe that that one has to be true to some extent. We also been able to hear that apparently the Iranian Foreign Ministry also stated today it's prohibited for any ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz without coordinating beforehand with Iran. In terms of a future framework for managing the strait, this is up to the two states that own this waterway, Iran and the Sultanate of Oman.
Oman getting pulled back in. I wonder if that's why that statement was made yesterday by the U.S. president, that they might just blow up Oman if they don't play ball. Maybe that's why. It sounds like Oman might be getting dragged into the situation.
Man, honestly, it kind of does sound like Oman's getting dragged in. So we'll have to see what happens with Oman in the diplomatic realm in the future, because we've already heard that they got threatened to be bombed, although they've been a neutral mediator between the U.S. and Iran for a little while, and the U.S. didn't threaten to bomb them. So we'll have to see what happens with Oman, and also how their diplomatic position might change during this attempted negotiation and then after the fact. But that's generally all the information that we have right now coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, which certainly appears to be quite an interesting development over the course of the day. In the meantime, we unfortunately saw that over the Houthi lands of western Yemen, an MQ-9 Reaper was shot down. That footage can be seen right there. And
Poor
moving
thing, look at it.
Man, honestly, sad little critter. And moving us on up from that, we've also been able to see that a Hezbollah rocket alert was given within northern Israel near Kiryat Shimona, which appears that they're getting rocketed again. And we also saw that Hezbollah is continuing to use FPV drones to target and strike Israeli forces throughout the entirety of southern Lebanon, with some footage here showing some of their hits that they've been able to land. FPV drones, by the way, folks, are starting to change the face of warfare as we've seen it in most areas of the world, especially inside of southern Lebanon, as it appears to have given Hezbollah what we can almost describe as equal footing against the Israelis in most engagements, because while the Hezbollah forces are not able to engage the Israelis in open fighting and succeed, these FPV drones are starting to cause significant losses, almost parallel to that of the Hezbollah forces that we're seeing inside of southern Lebanon at the moment. By the way, the Israeli government actually declared today that drones are a significant risk, and Israel is going to be the first country in the world to create drone defenses. I guess they never heard of Ukraine, because Ukraine literally has like a million different versions of drone defenses. But if the Israelis, would get their head out of their ass, at least up Russia's ass for that matter, they probably realize that Ukraine does have a lot of defenses that they could use if they weren't so friendly with the Russians. But we also were able to see here another clip showing us another attack that was made by Hezbollah drones within southern Lebanon as well, which is continuing to show us that these drones are quite literally causing a complete shift within this area. Israel's also conducted a withdrawal of some brigades from the area to try and cut down on the amount of personnel that could be within the drone strike range or directly hit by an FPV. And it appears that it might be leading to a very precarious situation. Israel also has no drone defenses of any sort at the moment right now, and most of their vehicles are not equipped or outfitted with any form of drone defenses. Even cope cages are largely missed in most areas that we see of Israeli occupation in southern Lebanon, like this Namera right here, which was directly hit on its upper plate.
Also notice, by the way, that Hezbollah is literally in stage 1 of drone warfare. They're using only the small, agile FPV hubs, fast-speed drones. That's all they're currently using right now. They don't have the massive octocopters like what the Ukrainians call the Baba Yaga that carries an anti-tank line. They apparently don't have that yet. And also, Hezbollah doesn't have drone interceptors either. So if Israel started fielding FPVs just like Hezbollah is doing, Hezbollah would be caught off guard as well. And that's what's needed in situations like this. You have to fight fire with fire, and what Israel should be doing right now is they should be fielding these FPVs, because if Hezbollah can do it as a terrorist force, then surely a very well solidified army like the IDF can adapt to something like this, or at least they should be able to.
Yeah, I would have to say they should be able to prepare some anti-drone defenses, but what's interesting, folks, is that we've seen, I would have to say, folks, Israel is wildly inflexible in the modern day with any types of counters or evolutions in their fighting style to be able to deal with modern threats, generally against drones. We see that they have no long-range defenses against drones that is effective. Say, for example, gun-based air defense systems. As a matter of fact, they are still researching and developing missile-based air defense systems, which are incredibly expensive to operate and cannot fire in the rate required to be able to shoot down large swarms of incoming kamikaze drones like Shaheds. And even on the front line, we've seen that basically no drone defenses exist, and if they do, they're incredibly small and largely inadequate. It's a little bit interesting to note that, because a lot of people always talk about how the Israeli military has a significant amount of prowess and is always thinking ahead, and they've been watching the war in Ukraine for 4 years and are now dealing with drone warfare in Lebanon, and they're acting like drone warfare is just becoming a threat today when it's been a threat for about 4 years at this point. Really, more so, the entirety of 6 years since the beginning of the second Nagorno-Karabakh war in Azerbaijan and Armenia around 6 years ago to this day. Moving us on out, though, of the Middle East, we've also been able to hear of some other significant developments pertaining to the situation and the drone attack that occurred by the Russian Federation in the city of Galati, Romania, just yesterday. We have seen that the Republic of Romania has made an official response to the situation through the office of the president of Romania. But to give you all a little bit of an update on the aftermath of the attack, pictures were taken of the damaged areas of the apartment building that were directly hit by the drone, and the damage was pretty extensive, as we can see right here.
That's some pretty bad damage right there. Honestly, go back to that other picture, by the way, of the apartment itself. I saw a couple of viewers pointing something out earlier. They said, "Well, how come there's like no rugs? There's nothing in this apartment right here." I think we're looking at the hallway or something in this picture. It looks like the drone hit the corridor, like before you enter an apartment. That appears to be one apartment that we're looking at, one entrance to an apartment, and also the photo is being taken from the apartment across the hall. So I think that's why there's nothing in this corridor, is because of that reason.
Yeah, this is actually the hallway bisecting the apartments on both sides of the building. That's why you can see in there, inside of that doorway, there's actually furniture and also cabinets and whatnot. This is just a hallway between the apartments. That's also why we're believing that there wasn't any fatalities, is that somehow the drone luckily impacted the entrance to the hallway, not the actual apartments that were inhabited, meaning that most of the explosive force was contained inside of the hallway, and some shrapnel possibly went through the wooden doorways and ended up causing the injuries. We're not entirely sure on that at the moment, but luckily the drone exploded in the hallway and not in an occupied apartment, which is why we're believing that there were no fatalities, meaning that these people quite literally were just a few feet to the left or right of imminent death when this drone exploded right next to their apartments in the midst of the night. We've also been able to hear that after this, the Romanian government has made a response and has conducted some actions, but this also comes on the fact that another drone was found in northern Romania near to the commune of Besesti. According to the TVR channel, the drone did not have an explosive device, but the local mayor said the device is large and its wingspan reaches about 3 meters. That is the exact size of a Russian Garan 2 decoy drone, just to make that clear. So we're getting it pretty obvious at this point that there were several drones that made it into Romania last night. The only one that we were talking about when we covered the breaking news yesterday was the one in Galati, because that's the only one we knew of at the time, and that was the only one that had directly exploded onto a populated city. This was the statement by the president of Romania today, and we'll be reading it in its entirety, as it's a very important statement in what it's going to be laying out in the future, and then we'll be talking about what has happened afterwards as far as Romania's actions and then other international actions that we've seen so far. This is from, by the way, just to mention the name, this is from Nicusar Dan, who is the president of Romania. I have convened the Supreme Council of National Defense meeting today at 11 a.m. to discuss the implications of the most serious incident to affect the national territory since the start of the Russian Federation's war of aggression against Ukraine. We will order proportionate measures in retaliation to the Russian Federation. My first thoughts turn to the injured persons, their families, and the residents who experienced terrifying moments in their own homes. I thank them for the calm with which they responded to the situation and assure them of the full support of the Romanian state. The unprecedented nature of the event demands a firm, coordinated, and appropriate response at the national, allied, and international levels. I declare with the utmost firmness that full responsibility for this incident lies with the Russian Federation. What happened today in Galati is the direct consequence of Russia's war of aggression unleashed against Ukraine, the irresponsible and indiscriminate manner in which Moscow operates these weapon systems in the immediate vicinity of NATO borders, as well as the systematic disregard for international law. There is no ambiguity regarding the perpetrator or the cause of this aggression. The Romanian armed forces acted in accordance with the procedures established for such situations under firm orders to shoot down the drone as soon as conditions allowed for such an operation without the risk of casualties or damage on the ground. The decision not to engage the target was taken because the conditions did not exist to destroy it without the heightened risk of endangering civilian safety. Romania's response is firm and multifaceted. I have ordered and initiated the following measures, some of which have already been carried out. Before we get to that, though, Matthew's reaction is honestly the one I was about to have, but I'm trying to make sure to get through this straight-faced. So the answer, by the way, folks, of why they didn't shoot down the drone is that they were scared that shooting it down might blow up a couple of Romanian civilians, so they just let the thing fly on into a high-rise that almost blew up a couple of Romanian civilians.
Yeah, how stupid is that logic? We don't want to shoot it down because it could hurt people, so we're just going to let it hit people instead. It's like, oh, well, that's great. It's like, isn't that like the same as like a doctor saying, let's cure the cancer, so we're just going to kill the patient? It's like, I mean, what kind of logic is this? This is crazy. It's like, wouldn't it be much better to have debris than a direct drone impact? I think that would be much better.
Man, this is like saying, the police were concerned that the drunk driver might end up harming himself or others due to his erratic driving behavior, so we didn't try and pull him over or stop him, and he ended up careening into a tree and also T-boning an SUV and ended up wounding several people and also ending himself in the process by running straight into a tree at 100 miles an hour. It's like, that's kind of like the response that the Romanians had, and this is absolutely stupid. If there is a flying bomb over your country's airspace, then the priority is to shoot it down before it gets over a city, reminding you all that there is literally nobody living between Galati and Renai on the Danube River. You can shoot that thing down in the middle of a farm field, and there's basically nobody living anywhere except for the town of Grinder, apparently, that's right there on the Danube. Outside of that, you could have shot it down anywhere, and nobody would have been in a threat of death because it most likely would have blown up in a field. So I don't really understand the logic here behind this one. I think this is largely trying to explain away the whole deal, but it's quite ridiculous, to be entirely honest with y'all. But getting back to the rest of the statement, some of which have already been carried out. One, informing allies. All NATO allies and European Union partners have been informed about the incident, and communication with allied military structures is ongoing in real time. Two, additional allied anti-drone capabilities. Romania has formally requested that allies deploy additional anti-drone capabilities on national territory to strengthen our defense and the alliance's eastern flank in accordance with EUR's instructions. Alerting the UN Security Council, Romania will formally inform the United Nations about this brutal and repeated violation of international law by the Russian Federation. The Ministry of National Defense, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Department for Emergency Situations, and Romanian Intelligence Service have been mobilized. Together with the local authorities in Galati, they are managing the consequences of the incident on the ground. A full investigation has been launched in the circumstances of the drone's fall, and technical expertise has been ordered to recover fragments for the precise identification of the weapon type and trajectory. I've asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to immediately present a series of measures to be taken regarding relations with the Russian Federation, proportionate to this extremely serious situation. Romania is a NATO member state and will not accept in any way the war of aggression waged by Russia against Ukraine to be transferred onto its citizens. The defense of national territory and Romania's citizens remains with my supreme duty as provided by the Constitution. It is a duty whose fulfillment we assume together with our allies, and today, as every day, we are stronger together. Romania's support for Ukraine, political, humanitarian, military, and on the path of European integration remains steadfast. The longer Russia continues this war, the clearer it becomes that it must end through a just and lasting peace that respects Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. So that is the full statement by the president of Romania.
Wow.
And it's quite weak.
I think we could have shortened that down to like a paragraph. I think that was a lot of word soup.
It was a lot of word soup, but through the word soup, we've gotten something pretty obvious. They're not even willing to invoke Article 4 at a minimum for what happened.
Yeah, that's pretty lame right there. Also, it's like they're going to send a letter to the UN Security Council. It's like, doesn't Russia sit on that?
Yeah, as a permanent member with veto privileges. So yeah, it's like, what's the point?
Yes, that's kind of pointless. Kind of like I said the other day, I said that NATO would end up forward deploying defenses. That's what they're doing. They said that right there in point number 2. They said they're going to bring in more anti-drone capabilities to defend their airspace. So the analysis was correct. They're bringing in more defenses, but they're not doing a direct military response to the Russians for sending in that drone. So that's a pretty lame response. Also, informing allies, it's like, well, everybody saw the video. It's like you don't have to send out formal letters for that. Everybody and their dog saw the headline. So it's a very weak response.
Yeah, very weak. They inform mommy, they inform daddy, and they inform the neighbors. But the one thing they didn't do is even try and invoke Article 4 yet on the situation. Remind you all, Estonia invoked Article 4 of the NATO Charter because a MiG-31 happened to skirt through their airspace for 2 minutes, and then a Russian border guard walked across the border and hung out for 20 minutes on the Estonian side. They invoked Article 4 over both of those situations. The Russians just blew up a drone in an apartment building, almost killed 2 people at a minimum because they're wounded as a result of the attack. It is a literal armed attack on the territory of Romania, whether it's intentional or not, and Romania doesn't even have the damn gall to invoke Article 4 at a minimum over this. All they're saying is, we informed everybody about what happened, and we'll see what happens. That's it. Like, I honestly got to say, folks, with that kind of a mindset, we're begging for a war with Russia at this point because we're looking so weak. They're probably thinking that our resolve will be so non-existent if they do go into a war with us that they probably would be able to get significant diplomatic concessions. I mean, hell, at this point, Putin could start firing missiles at the presidential palace in Vilnius, and the Lithuanians will probably just give them a strongly worded letter saying, we condemn the actions that you just took to wipe out our whole parliament and our president, and we're very unhappy about that. It's ridiculous. And a lot of people are currently putting in their opinions right now in the chat about what they think about this statement today, but I also want to add, before we get to it, that the Romanians did take one action that was at least something. They did declare the Russian embassy or the Russian consulate general in Constanta persona non grata, and the consulate inside of Constanta is going to be closed within the near future. This is the Russian consulate in Constanta, Romania. Not really that impressive, to be honest with y'all, but it's a consulate, so not really going to be the most impressive thing. But nevertheless, a lot of people are talking about what the Romanians have done so far, and Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so in response to this, Romania said, well, we got hit, but the Russian diplomats can hit the road. Also, their consulate's getting shut down too. I guess they're going to take that back to Romania. So what do you think about that? Is that a good response or not? 42% said that is a good response. 36% said that's a weak response. And 17% said there's probably a bigger response coming soon. And I hate to say it, but help is not on the way. There's not a bigger response coming soon. It's simply not going to be the case. They won't even invoke Article 4, which at this point is basically a free luncheon for the NATO diplomats for the most part, because they really do nothing at the Article 4 conference, and it's largely just a get-together for the most part. So I would say that's better than nothing. So I'm with the 41%. It's a good response because, I mean, the alternative is they could have done literally nothing, which is the bare minimum. So I would say it's a good response in the world of good responses, I guess you could say. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would actually have to be with the 37%. I think it's actually a fairly weak response. The fact that they're not even willing to invoke Article 4, which they do have the right to as a NATO member, is very weak, and I find that to be generally pathetic. There should be a larger response than what we've seen so far, rather than just kicking the Russians out of their little Tea Party building in the ghetto in Kastana, and then also just saying that they were very displeased about almost having a couple of their own people blown up. Because I'll be honest with y'all, folks, if the Russians almost blew me up in my house, I would hope that the President of the United States would say something a little bit more than, I'm kind of displeased that you almost blew up one of our own citizens and killed him. You know, I feel like the response ought to be a little bit more appropriate than that, because that seems to be quite weak to me. You know, put yourself in their shoes, folks. If you were in that apartment building and a bomb just blew up almost right on top of your head and almost killed you, would you really like to hear that the government that is elected to represent you and the people of your country just stated, we were very unhappy about it and we told everybody that you almost got blown up, but outside of that, we're really going to be doing nothing more about it? I would be pretty miffed. I'd be pissed, actually, about that, because I'd be feeling like my government isn't even going to be there to help protect me or save me if the Russians legitimately try and blow me up and kill me the next time.
That is true. That is true. I would agree with that. It should have been a stronger response. I agree.
Yeah, I would have to say. We also got to see that Peter Pavel in the Czech Republic stated the unprecedented nighttime strike on a residential building by a Russian drone in which 2 people were injured is utterly unacceptable. However, we should not stop at a mere joint condemnation. I therefore unequivocally support the Romanian President Dan's call for a strong international response. Russia must clearly understand that we will not tolerate such attacks. So it appears that Peter is calling for something further than just, you know, statements of, I'm kind of a little bit unhappy about this whole thing. So we'll see what that turns into. In the meantime, though, just to cover this a little bit of a side news here before we get into what the Russians have been saying today, Bulgaria is going to be expelling U.S. forces from the Sofia airport at the end of June. This comes as the United States failed to approve a visa-free system for Bulgarian visitors to the United States. So that made the Bulgarians pretty unhappy, so they're telling the U.S. to get out.
A visa-free system? Like, what do they mean of visa-free? What do they mean by that?
I don't really know. I actually have no clue. But that's apparently the point of contention is
Huh.
that they wanted a visa-free system for Bulgarian visitors to travel to the United States, and the fact that the U.S. wouldn't give that to them apparently miffed the Bulgarians enough. They told us we can't operate from Bulgaria anymore in any of our operations against Iran, which is the only reason why we're in Bulgaria right now.
That sounds like a pretty lame reason to do that, by the way. I don't know what they mean by a visa-free system. That sounds a little bit over the top, whatever they're referring to with that. So, honestly, that one sounds like it's bad on Bulgaria for doing that. I would say that sounds like an overreaction, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really need like as far as like military basing areas, we don't necessarily need Bulgaria. It was a nice place to be to spread stuff out and to also have some of our forces operating from NATO territory where they generally be safer from an Iranian attack. But a little bit interesting to see that kind of response from Bulgaria. They said, "Can we have visa free?" And we said, no, get out." Man, it's like, damn, okay. It's like,
No visa-free, but you can have MasterCard.
man, honest. Wait a minute. So I see someone actually explained it really quickly in the chat. They said that apparently they would just need a passport, not a visa, to visit the United States. So basically, kind of like how we travel to Britain, you just show your passport and you get in without having to show a pre-approved visa to travel to the UK. That's what they were wanting. So they just wanted a Bulgarian to be able to show up to the US, show their passport, and that would be good enough to get in.
Interesting. I don't really know like all the details about that, but it sounds a little crazy to cancel our basing there over something like that. But I guess that's what they're right.
Let's see here. Visa free. Um, Yeah, so it's you would only need a valid passport. So that's what they're looking for, is like for short visits, less than 30 days, which was actually kind of lengthy when you think about it. But for less than 30 days, they were looking for Bulgarian just to show up with a passport and they'd be able to get through. I mean, honestly, like I would have to say this though. I guess that is kind of a little bit fair when you look at it, because we're saying that we trust Bulgaria enough to base our forces in their country for military strikes against Iran, but we also don't trust them enough for their citizens to show up just with their passport. They need a visa. So I guess that might have been insulting to the Bulgarians, the fact that they allowed us to base in their country when they don't have to, and then the U.S. wouldn't just allow their citizens to show up like, those from Britain and just show their passport and get in. And so they got pissed off enough they are kicking us out. So a little unfortunate. Not the end of the world for things going on with Iran, but apparently a little bit of a diplomatic spat between us and the Bulgarians today. But now it's time for us to get to the Russian responses to everything that happened and in Galati. So moving us on into the area, we did get to hear that Medvedev, who started the statements off today, said the following about the situation. Citizens of EU countries, you should realize your authorities have unilaterally entered into a war with Russia, so be vigilant and don't be surprised by anything. The peaceful sleep is over, but you know who to ask why. So Dmitry Medvedev basically just openly stated that Russia is in a state of war with the whole of Europe today. He doesn't hold an official government position, but he is a significant advisor. Well, I was about to say he's a significant advisor to Putin.
Well, no, he's more than an advisor. He sits on the Russian Security Council of Russia. Actually, he's the deputy chairman.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. That's news to me. I always thought he was just like some advisor, like
Oh no.
like that Dugin guy with the little boo boo.
Oh no, Dugan's not even really an advisor anymore for the most part. He hangs around those circles, but he's not really an official advisor to my knowledge. But no, I was explaining that in my video earlier today. Everybody writes off Medvedev as they say, oh, he's got his little problem on the side. He's fond of certain, beverages, possibly. They also say, he's a lunatic. He threatens NATO all the time. But this guy actually, he has the ear of Vladimir Putin, like constantly talks to Putin. He's actually a legit advisor. And also, like I said, the deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia. So he wields real power. And at one point, he was actually in charge of Russia when Putin needed to switch up with somebody. So Medvedev's nobody just to write off. Like, he's crazy, and it gets old to hear the threats all the time. But he's essentially, basically the mouthpiece for Putin, what he's really thinking internally.
Now, I'd have to say, that's interesting. I actually didn't know that about Medvedev, so thank you for sharing that. We did get to see, however, that while he was stating that there is an open state of war now between Russia and Europe, One of the spokespeople for the Kremlin, Maria Zakharova, stated that the accusations of Russia's involvement in the drone incident in Romania are groundless. So while Medvedev saying that it was Russia and they should sleep with one eye open because they're out to kill everyone in Europe, Zakharova was then saying that Russia's involvement is completely baseless. It wasn't even their drone. And then Putin came out, who is the president of the Russian Federation and the dictator, and stated the following. He said that the origin of the drone that struck a multi-story building in Romania cannot be determined until a proper investigation is carried out. And then he said, after all, we know that Ukrainian drones flew into Finland, Poland, and somewhere in the Baltic countries. The first reaction was exactly the same as it is now in Romania. Well, the stupid thing about that is, though, is that Ukrainian drones did veer into Baltic state countries because they were having to fly north to bomb St. Petersburg. There is no part of Russia that's south towards Romania for a Ukrainian drone to be flying that way to go blow something up. So unlike all of the other situations where we've had to even get on air and say it could be a Ukrainian one because it might have had electronic warfare interference turn it over and into the border area of Latvia, Estonia, or Finland, this is quite clearly a Russian attack. There were attacks during that time at Renai and Izmail in Ukraine, and then an explosion happens in Galati in the midst of all the other Russian drones blowing up on the ports of Renai and Izmail, and it literally has the same skin and design as a Gran 2. I mean, come on, that doesn't take a lot to put the pieces together.
Yeah, and also look at the double standard. Putin is saying that they have to be able to get concrete evidence that the drones that went into Romania are apparently Russian drones. He said there needs to be like due diligence to determine what the origin of those drones actually is. And meanwhile, he's saying without any evidence whatsoever that Ukrainian drones are flying all over the Baltic states with zero investigation. What a double standard with that. It's like Putin clearly hasn't had the chance to inspect the drones on the ground inside of the Baltics. He can't even go there to inspect it. So that's kind of a wild thing to say too. Also, it's like, is anybody really buying this garbage? It's like the Russian Federation doesn't know what they fired. Like the fact that Putin's suggesting an investigation, like he doesn't know what his forces are doing, is silly on his face.
Also, that's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there's literally drone debris on the ground that we saw from yesterday. I think we have it on the map. Oh, actually, we don't, sadly. I forgot. We just showed that on Twitter, and I didn't put it on the map. But there were literally debris fragments on the ground from the drone, and it was literally a Gran 2. There's only one drone that has that kind of black carbon fiber-looking skin to it in the world right now, and it's the Gran 2 made in Russia. So it's not like it's up to question of, oh, who in the world could have built this clearly distinct drone with this very specific type of skin. Who would ever guess? It is Russia. I mean, quite literally. There's no question about it. There's no doubts in anyone's mind. It is a Russian drone. But moving us on out of that bit of news about how the Russians have responded to this whole situation today, in the meantime, we did get to hear out of the Kremlin, or more so out of Moscow, that at the same time that all this was going on, Putin also stated, just slid this one in the midst of the whole Romania situation, it is impossible to name specific deadlines for ending the war in Ukraine under conditions of active combat operations, meaning that they now have reversed from their statement of this could go on for like 3 more years. Now they're saying they have no clue when this thing is ever going to end, because they're not achieving squat in Ukraine. As a matter of fact, they're actually losing ground right now on the southern front, so they're being set back even further from what they were trying to achieve. So now he just slipped that one in the middle of the day and said, actually, we don't know when the war is going to end. So now the Russians are working off of an indefinite war timetable. Folks, I remember when the Russians said, Putin is a wise man, a chess master, unlike your American president who puts your country into forever wars like Iraq and Afghanistan. We are different. We enter forever wars in Eastern Europe. Like we keep fighting for 20 years and achieve nothing. But anyways, moving us on out of that, we do have a lot more news to cover inside of Ukraine and also over in the Americas, which we'll be getting to here in a brief moment. But before we get into all of that news, which we still have a lot of interesting and big news to go, I do want to say a humongous thanks to every single person who has been watching the show so far today, because we have seen that a humongous amount of people have been here. 17,100 people have been here at the peak, and 86,000 people have watched this stream in the first hour and 10 minutes. And I got to say that we're entirely honored and heavily appreciative to know that so many of you all continue to watch this channel every single day as your primary source of news. Yesterday, we were number 25 in America in the top live streams, and it is something to know that people continue to watch this show in such large numbers every day to be able to get their news. listeners. I hope that so far our analysis and also our coverage has been up to spec and up to enforcer standard as it has been for 1,556 days. And before we move on into the rest of all the huge news that we have, I do want to make sure that we take a brief pause here to get 3 questions from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night and then getting right back to our breaking news after we grab 3 of them. Our first one goes to none other than Jeannie, last name Tolls, who put in a $100 support. And thank you very much, Jeannie Tolls, for that $100 support. And we do appreciate that generous support. Once again, it said, I want a leader who knows the difference between a horse or a cow or a chicken when he sees it without the confusion. We're in good hands, boys. But Jeannie, I mean, you got to, like, we have to be fair here. Like, we have to be fair a little bit. If you're presented with a question as difficult as a lion, tiger, bear, or cow, like, that's not just a question for the weak-hearted. Like, you have to have a heart of steel. You have to have that iron in you before you go into an examination like that. If you go in unprepared, that question could blindside you. Like, you got to watch out. So, I mean, we can't ask too much. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, folks, I went in yesterday, as all of us do weekly, for our cognitive test, and I gotta tell you, they beat me, folks. It was bad. They showed 4 pictures of animals. They had a dog, a fish, a giraffe, and also a grizzly bear. And they asked me which one was the dog. And honestly, I just couldn't tell you. It caught me, blindsided me. I had absolutely no clue. I was confused. I was sweating profusely. I sat there and said, "My God, I don't know what I'm doing. Look, Jack, your corn pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys." But yeah, you gotta make sure to get those difficult questions down, like what's the difference in between certain types of animals, because clearly that comes up every day, and it's always a hard one to answer.
Could you imagine that fellow taking the LSAT, the law school exam? Oh my God. Like, that would probably look like freaking Arabic to an English speaker. Like, that would be horrifying. Like, the LSAT, by the way, folks, is the law school entrance exam. It's very difficult, or at least I found it difficult. I think most people do. There's some people that ace it, but that's kind of rare. But it's extremely difficult, very complex questions on that thing that require a lot of thinking, which is probably like 10 or 15 times harder than what's the lion, tiger, or bear question. So, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that would be interesting to see. I don't think he'd do too well at it, but folks, it's always hard to get those answers right, though. I mean, who in the world? Like, if someone says that a giraffe is a dog, I mean, clearly it's just a tough day for him. It clearly doesn't show anything wrong. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and a huge thanks to you for always supporting this channel, Jeannie, last name Tolls. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running day in and day out to be able to cover this news. It's folks like you who help this channel to stay ad-free and sponsor-free on our live streams, and help us to keep the lights on and pay the bills that we're incredibly appreciative of, because you let us work non-stop. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so this one goes to Howard Mendelson, who puts in a very generous $100 support as well. And thank you very much, Howard, for that support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. Sadly, I will have to censor just a little bit here, but he believes that some of the events in the Middle East may not be what they seem, and it could be for ulterior motives. But I'll have to leave it at that, though, so that way we don't make any crazy claims on the air, though. But he also enjoys having a nice taco dinner on Tuesday, which is always a good change up from the regular. Also, he does like to go to the gym and avoid having a wimp out Wednesday. And also, occasionally he gets a little feisty on Thursday and likes to threaten them again. And then fake peace talks on Friday.
Well, the peace talk is only hours away, folks. I mean, we literally heard that yesterday. No joke. And now today they're saying they're going to bomb everyone in the Strait of Hormuz in an official letter given to everyone in the area that would need to know. So I would think at this point, folks, if you have a pretty negative outlook of how this has been handled just due to the insanity of it all, I mean, really, you're not that far-fetched. I mean, honestly, folks, I've never seen anything this mismanaged in my life. And I came from Alabama, folks. The government in Alabama is inherently dysfunctional at every level. And so if I'm saying that it looks confused and disjointed, Believe me, it's confused and extremely disjointed. There's literally no sense to be made out of this whole thing at this point. So I thank you incredibly for that massive support, Howard Mendelson, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And I would have to say that your frustrations are not unfounded. I, too, am quite frustrated by the situation. But a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world. And so what do we got?
All right. So the last one here before we get back to the news goes to Father Avery Daniel. And thank you very much for that $100 support as well. And a huge shout out to you, Avery, for once again supporting the channel in such a big way. We do appreciate that. He said, could it make sense that the president's post was basically his final demand and the only thing he'd be willing to sign if he got his demands first? In the context of the NAV sent notice about the Strait of Hormuz, might we presume his answer is nah? And thanks for everything. LLTLSA for the Costco chicken.
And a huge thanks to you for support and the Costco Chicken Fund. And there is a possibility that that could be the case, but the thing is about the public statements, though, is that generally they don't really do a lot for negotiation's sake, because negotiations are actually supposed to be done between our diplomatic team and their diplomatic team. Usually when terms are announced to the public, that's usually looked at in diplomatic circles poorly and could end up jeopardizing or completely derailing talks. If he wanted those terms, he could just tell his diplomatic team that that's what he wants, and then they present that to the Iranians, and the Iranians get back to them with a yes or no answer. But him always going to Truth Social and putting it out there for the whole public to see isn't really for the benefit of the negotiations. That's more so for the benefit of public image, to try and make it look a certain way to the U.S. public when it could be going entirely different in the background in the actual negotiating channels, for good or for bad. So I would say that it could be his final demand. I mean, that's not out of the question, but generally final demands are supposed to be conveyed directly to the diplomatic team that we're talking to, and that certainly isn't the way to directly convey it to them, because that's basically putting it on blast for the whole world, and that usually never goes well. That's usually how you end up scaring a diplomatic team and making them back off and say no to absolutely everything, and they'd rather go to war at this point than anything, because we're showing bad faith actions on our end. And it doesn't sound like bad faith to some people, because some people be like, well, it's not bad faith to do that. Well, in the diplomatic world, it certainly is, because you're not supposed to go and start talking about sensitive details for the larger part of the ongoing deal or what your terms are at that very moment, and then tell the whole public before you tell them. Now there's a lot of nuance with that. Like, for example, when you go in negotiations, it's obvious that you should tell the US public exactly what you're going for. But then once you get into the talks, you generally give it some sensitivity and don't end up making any publicized statements to say, I'm just going to let the talks take their course, or talking to them, or trying to figure it out. And once we get a yes or no answer, we're going to tell the public what we have and what we're going to be working off of from here. So if they say no, say the talks have failed, we have to go back to war, it's a necessity at this point for these reasons. Yeah. Or if there was a deal, you come out and say, we have been able to achieve a deal, and this is the finalized one that we're signing right here.
Well, remember, by the way, the U.S. isn't directly talking with Iran. It's all going through Pakistan still, because the Iranians won't get in the same room as the U.S. Diplomats. They still won't. So we don't really know what the Iranians are thinking. Like, there's a lot to be said for in-person negotiations. You can pick up on body language. You can pick up on their tone and things like that. Right now, we're playing the tag game with the diplomats in Pakistan, and they keep shuttling stuff back and forth to Iran. So, I mean, that's already not a great sign. We're having to use a third party like that to shuttle messages back and forth. And also, I mean, we're not even negotiating with the leader of the country. The leader, Mujtaba, if he's even the leader at this point, is holed up in a bunker and won't come out.
Yeah, and also on top of that, we think he's a figurehead. We think it's an IRGC council running the country at this point. But regardless, though, to answer your question, the president's public statements really don't do anything at all to benefit, progress, or create any sort of finalized conclusion to peace talks. If anything, they're jeopardizing peace talks every time a statement's made to the public. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running and making this thing a possibility, because it's thanks to your support that we're able to make this channel possible day in and day out, and we're hugely appreciative of that. And so with that, it is time for us to get on into the rest of our news. And before we move on, folks, we got the AHL question. How do you know what the president knows? I mean, we don't, but, we generally make our publicized ideas here on air, and it looks like we're almost right all the time. So, generally we have a pretty good idea of what's going on. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to get on down into Cuba, because there's a little bit of an update that came out from Cuba today. Apparently, a little meeting was had in Guantanamo Bay between some Cuban military officers and some top U.S. officials, although I don't really think... Hmm?
I said, oh shit. They're meeting in Guantanamo Bay. That's not good.
I heard that they used enhanced negotiation tactics on them. It was fun things, like waterboarding near the beach and things like that. Things that we all do in our free time. But we also were able to hear that
The Cubans will behave, or they'll get the hose again. I'll get in the stress position.
Man, they said the torture will continue until morale improves. It's like, man, honestly, that's a tough negotiating stance. But outside of that, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, General Donovan, apparently was at the meeting with senior Cuban military leaders at the perimeter of Guantanamo Bay. At least that's what we're hearing from Phil Stewart's sources that came out on Twitter. So the meeting was held somewhere in Guantanamo Bay. We don't really know exactly where. You can actually see the detention center at Guantanamo Bay right down here. You can also see more of it right over here. There's more of it all through this area. And then there's this little area down here that's also Camp Justice. This is also another part of the detention facility. I think you see some of the U.S. naval stations here and all of the other additional facilities. The rest of it is basically just a large perimeter. You can actually see the Cuban-U.S. perimeter right here that skirts around the territory or recognized border of Guantanamo Bay that the U.S. controls in the rest of communist Cuba. And we understand the meeting was held within this area. We don't know what building or any other further details or what came out of this meeting even, but there was a meeting. That's all we can say at this point. We'll have to see how America's stance is against Cuba here in the future, because that might give us an indication as to how this went today. Moving us on out of that, we also were able to hear in Washington, D.C. today that apparently the U.S. Treasury extended until June 27th the license allowing transactions tied to the sale of Russia's Lukoil international assets. The company previously announced plans to sell foreign holdings after Washington imposed sanctions. So we are hearing that there was a little extension on some licenses that were previously not allowed under sanctions. That's interesting. In the middle.
Yes. It's like the Americans are working against the Ukrainians' goals to bring the Russian oil industry down. It's almost like they're trying to counteract it. That's kind of a strange thing to do right there, considering that Ukraine's hitting refineries for the sole purpose of bankrupting those companies. That way Russia can't fund its war. That's very strange.
Oh, but the loophole. We let them sell their foreign holdings to give them tens of billions of dollars and offset years of Ukrainian damage that's happened to these companies financially.
That's very strange.
A little bit odd. Wouldn't y'all say? I think so. I think we all kind of catching on real nice like these days. But moving us on out of that, the Ukrainians did conduct another major drone attack on the Russian Federation overnight. One of the main targets that was hit off the bat was Taganrog. We did get to see some air defense fire in Taganrog in this clip.
Oh, damn.
Oh, bled.
Oh, whoa. It's flocks of air defense.
Man, they better hope those proximity fuses are working, because I wouldn't want one of those landing in my living room.
It's flocks of air defense. They're moving for the winter.
Car alarms going off. It's hell on earth in Taganrog again. There was also a confirmed ground explosion in Taganrog in that clip as well. Looks to be a dead-on hit.
Whoa, somebody's celebrating in the streets. Somebody out there is vodka-filled.
Man, someone said, "At the Babedi!" It's like, yes, it's victory day! Yay! It's like, yes, victory! Yeah. In the middle of the 29th of May. That's, only, 3 weeks off, but whatever. Moving us on out of that, the Volgograd refinery is on fire and burning profusely. Here's another picture of it that came out from the night. It's still burning at the moment right now. Infrared satellites showed that there were major fires on the facility. We also got to confirm that way out in the middle, the literal middle of nowhere near Ustrium, which is this little village right here, which I bet looks ungodly. They don't even have street view. This place is so bad off, it doesn't even have a street view. Maybe, What the no? We can go to the village down here, bled. So this is the nearby village and what it looks like.
Oh, yes. It's like they built this on the sewer pit.
Yeah, I think they call this a cesspit. But this generally looks like the place that the first Borat movie showed Borat leaving from Kazakhstan to come to America. Kind of the same sort of style. Let me go get that. Borat Village. Let me go show you all this. Because, oh my goodness. Oh yeah, here we go. Let me. So, this is literally Borat Village. Like no joke. Looks just like it. Or this one right
It's pretty
here.
close.
Yeah, I mean, it's like insanely close. It looks just like this place. So down near Borat Village in the Perm region, this happened. I'm not going to explain any farther. This happened.
Oh, permanent damage.
Уши. Уши закрывай, ложись.
He said that's bad, Pasha. That's bad. Don't look.
He said, "Oh, my money!" Like it's the vodka stash. It's the Russian National Strategic Vodka Reserve that just blew up out there. We have no clue what blew up. It was near to the town of this Ustrim, but when you look around Ustrim, there's nothing there. Like there's literally nothing around here. So I'm very much confused as to what the hell actually blew up, because there's no growl arsenals around here or any other larger ammo dumps, so it's a bit of a mystery as to what the hell blew up in the forests around Ustrim. So, you know, we'll find out eventually, or maybe not, but it was one hell of an explosion. That cannot be understated generally. So moving us on out of that little bit of news in the far reaches of the Ural Mountains, we also were able to see, moving us on and finally into the front lines in Ukraine, that the Ukrainian armed forces have been working hard today. In the midst of all this, though, there has been some unfortunate statements. For one, we did get to hear that the Ukrainians had to emphasize that Ukrainians should not ignore air raid sirens during the next 2 days, especially in Kyiv, as they believe there's going to be another major attack within the next 48 hours. We've already seen that a large amount of the citizens of Kyiv have already started taking to the subway shelters below and have started setting up camping tents to be able to give themselves a little bit of privacy and live out of the metro, to be able to try and stay safe from any incoming Russian attacks that are going to be occurring over the next few days. We've also been able to hear, additionally, outside of this, that the Ukrainians have been reporting an attack on a Turkish vessel, the Turkish-owned cargo ship Ant, that was hit with a UAV as it was sailing from an Odessa region port to Turkey under the Vanuatuan flag. A fire broke out after the hit, and 2 wounded crew members were evacuated by the Ukrainian Navy. We could see the damage to the top of the superstructure there, and the paint had been burned off from the heat of the fire. We can also see firefighting efforts underway by the Ukrainian Navy, and we can also see additional pictures of the inflicted site and the damaged areas of the vessel that had been hit directly by a Russian drone. We also have been able to report that within the area of the Kherson region, Ukraine has started to work on a brand new drone innovation, which we'll have to mute the music for, but they're apparently launching FPV drones off of the booms of Magura drones, naval drones, to be able to try and get them into areas that are hard to reach for Ukrainian drones, and to also add a little bit of concealment and stealth to these drone operations as well. We can actually see that boom extending right here off the Magura. We now see them launching their drones. Fly, baby, fly! It's going to go find some Russians. Blow them up. Real nice like. Honestly, a pretty wild innovation. But moving us on out of this whole area of the sea, we now have to move to the most important part of Ukraine that we've seen so far that's unfolding in the war, which is the Southern Front. Many people have been starting to hear that the Southern Front isn't going well. And we even got to hear today that, according to some analysts in the Institute of the Study of War, they said the character of the war is shifting in favor of Ukrainian forces, at least for now. So it does appear that many people, including the Institute for the Study of War, are seeing that the tides are shifting back into Ukraine's favor, and not for any lack of a reason. Fuel shortages are gripping the entirety of Crimea and most of the Southern Front. Fuel queues are now extending well over a mile at most gas stations, as fuel is physically unavailable in most areas of the Southern Front of occupied Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Crimea.
This is getting pretty bad. These lines are getting longer and longer. I've seen, I think you might have the video coming up here soon, but all the signs in Crimea, most of their gas stations have literal zeros on the board, like for the price of the gasoline per gallon or per liter, whatever they sell it in. And it's really spreading fast across the entire Crimea area.
I would have to agree. It really is. I sadly don't have that post. I had to cut it down for like brevity's sake, so I just had that one clip to show it. But most gas stations in Crimea and also all the way up to Melitopol quite literally have no fuel left to sell, which is becoming a desperate situation for the Russian army, which uses that fuel, and also the Russian civilians as well, which would also use that fuel. Within the Sevastopol area, we also were able to confirm that the Russian airfields of Kacha and Belbek were attacked by the Ukrainian armed forces today, but we haven't been able to get video and picture evidence of the damage reports yet. Additionally, we also saw that it appears that the oil depot in Feodosia was hit again, as its large glowing burning orb came from the city after a Ukrainian drone attack tonight, which appears to be showing that oil depot has been hit again and is on fire. Now, moving us on, before we get to the rest of the Southern Front, I do have to touch on a couple of extra things that happened in the Krasnodar Oblast. For one, it does appear that Russian forces in the area of this FSB Electronic Intelligence Center were blown to smithereens. Apparently, a load of Ukrainian drones hit this facility. This is what it looked like before the attack, and this is what it looks like after the attack.
Whoa, jeez. I would say the FSB got jacked up right there. They didn't see that coming.
Man. Hey, yo, bro, they did not see that coming. Bro, I was just trying to come up with a sound effect to get this thing moving. Yeah, like, honestly, well, outside of throwing Matthew off with that one, because I literally just did that with no context.
The AO usually means, like, something was dirty that was said. I was like, how the hell could this be, like, construed as nasty? I'm like, they didn't see it coming? Like, I mean, what the hell?
Man, bro, I was like sitting there, man. I was like, oh, what do I say to like get my monologue moving on? I was like, hey, yo, and then you went, huh? Bro, I was like, damn. I was like, that was the wrong one to use because it really does mean that. But most of the FSB Electronic Intelligence Center was completely destroyed. So quite an interesting thing to see. And of course, good to know that the Ukrainians are still working their magic on the FSB. They just never see the Ukrainian forces coming at all, which kind of is their whole job. They're the intelligence force. We also got to see that down in Novorossiysk, we have gotten full-blown confirmation that the Admiral Essen has been schmacked, and schmacked heavily. It was hit on the starboard side of the vessel, directly near to the superstructure, and we actually have some footage of this attack. We've never seen this footage before, and it just came out today. I'm going to skip forward to the part where the drone comes right in onto the side of the Essen, right there. There's the drone. And we're just going to watch these last few seconds of the clip to show you all the hit on the direct side, the starboard side of the bridge of the Admiral Essen. There it is, coming on in.
Oh my God.
Right to the mark. Oh! Oh!
Man, honestly, I'm more impressed by the sheer amount of waste of ammunition that's going on. They are like firing non-stop into this harbor. Like, back this footage up. Look at all these freaking bullets flying through the air, man. It's like, this is crazy.
They went insane. Oh my God. And they were missing it all. Oh.
Damn, man, they getting hit shit with that. Man, they were firing like thousands of rounds in like just a mere matter of seconds. They didn't hit a damn thing.
Bro, honestly, man, like, I don't know where they send these Russian anti-air gunners to gunnery school, but they need to shut that gunnery school down and find a better one, because what's even more interesting is knowing how much AA fire there was. When you look at the video from the Ukrainian drone coming in, do you notice something interesting, Matthew, about what they're seeing?
What is it?
The lack of bullets that are overshooting. Everyone's undershooting the drone. There's literally no bullets in the Ukrainian POV from the drone that are flying in front of it. Apparently, all of the Russians must be aiming their iron sights or their scope directly onto the drone, and because they're doing that, they're not leading the target enough to hit it, so all of their bullets are flying behind the drone, which is flying short, and none of them were ever flying in front of the drone. I mean, look at the view up there in the top right. There's literally not a damn tracer or a bullet to be seen flying in front of the camera. So everybody was undershooting this drone.
I think they're just doing this to look busy, honestly, so that way they don't get in trouble. I think they're just firing randomly just to say that they did something, but they know they're not going to hit it. I guess. Also, I see Mark Hooper and a couple others saying, "What are those blue streaks in the sky? Those are the spotlights, and then you put a filter over the lens of the spotlight, so it looks like that. Are those? Those aren't lasers, are they?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I think they're normal spotlights, and they're simply showing up like that because of a filter.
Man, honestly, also someone said something funny in this. Sound came immediately at impact. I would doubt that because one Mississippi, two Miss, so almost 2 seconds from impact to sound seems to be a little off to me. It's a real video, by the way, because the Admiral Essen, you can see it on satellite. It's charred on the starboard side, so it's not really light. The video is fake, But outside of that, what a hit. I mean, really something else. Also, by the way, if y'all are wondering what the Admiral Essen looks like up close, that's the Admiral Essen in full glory at sea.
Yeah, it was the Admiral Essen. Now it's got a big scratch on the side, a good dent. Not to put down the ship facts.
Man, they're gonna sit there and call this thing the Admiral Pleasant because that be looking splendid these days.
Somebody's gonna come along and be like, I would take it off your hands, but it's had an ugly ship fix. It's had a wreck. And they're gonna be like, no wreck, just a little scratch, that's all.
But could we take it for a test drive? No. We sell as is. You have to buy it either here or walk away.
It has the unintended feature of turning into a submarine if you're not careful.
I can already see who's gonna buy this.
Some random Pakistan. India could buy this. I could see that.
Bro, they're gonna buy this and then find out they were scammed. You're gonna hear Modi yelling, "We will find, track, and punish."
No. They'll buy this because the Indian military. We're going to get shit for this, by the way, because the Indian people get very upset when we talk about their military. But you remember when they left the hatch open on the submarine and it flooded because they left they're going to end up leaving a port or a bilge port or something open on the ship. They're going to drive this thing and it's going to slowly start sinking into the water deeper and deeper. They're going to be like, "What's going on?" And it's going to keep going down until it finally sinks.
Oh man, no, better yet, man. You know what they would do? They would go into the engine room and they would pile a whole bunch of random shit on the engines, and forget about it or something, and then the engine would explode and they'd have to abandon ship because the fire got out of control. That's probably what would happen.
Man, honestly, I cracked myself up with that. I almost forgot completely about the Indian Navy, literally with their submarine. They forgot to close a hatch on their submarine, so they literally flooded the hell out of their submarine. I can't remember if people drowned in the submarine or what happened, but it was so bad, though, that it made the news that the Indian Navy had literally left a whole hatch open on the submarine, and then they just flooded the damn thing.
Let me see here.
It's how that even possible? It's I don't even understand how the hell that's possible.
In January of 2018, it was reported that an aft hatch on the submarine was left open by mistake while the submarine was docked in 2017, leading to salt water flooding the propulsion compartment, rendering the submarine inoperative for 10 months while the corroded pipes were replaced. The Indian Ministry of Defense refused to comment on the allegation, claiming it would be a breach of national security, which is basically admitting that it happened, but they didn't want to admit that it actually happened because it's embarrassing. But this is the submarine. At least right here, it's basically a modified Kilo for the larger part that had the incident.
Yeah, it's just crazy right there. Honestly, when that India-Pakistan war was going, I've seen stuff that I've never seen before, mistake-wise, happening in that war that we'll probably never see again.
Man, someone though out there, man, who's thinking about this whole deal of refurbishing a ship to look fine, although it's been messed up. It's North Korea, bro. Kim Jong-un's fat ass is sagging the whole bench down, smoking on a cigarette, looked over and said, first time? It's yeah, it's first time for the Russians. They're gonna have to figure out how to make this thing look somewhat operational. Honestly, man, the Vostochny Island's basically a junkyard at this point. They have that half-sunken Kilo class still stuck in there. Now they got the burnt-up remains of the Admiral Essen sitting on the other side of the wharf. Before the end of the war, it's literally just gonna be a junkyard of abandoned and mostly destroyed ships.
Honestly, it probably will be before long. And the crazy part is it's because Ukraine doesn't even have a navy.
Man, Zelensky said, We may not have a navy, but call us a dolphin because this be resilient. Bro, like blew the air.
I guess we can call the Russians Old Navy. They're not selling clothes, but they're sinking ships.
You know something? The Russian Navy's looking real good right now. Call it Old Bay because we're putting all that shit on it, man. Like, oh, man. Bro, I'm telling you, man. The Russian Navy, it's not going to last that much longer.
Yeah, I agree.
But moving us on out of that whole news in the Vostochny Raion, we also get to see that down in the Mariupol area on the M14, things are still going desperately. Russians cry out from the depths of the front. Berdyansk is also under attack. Intensive attacks by enemy on our logistics have reached the shores of the Azov. Attacks by Ukrainian formations with Hornet drones are also taking place on the highway in the Berdyansk area. The directed distance to Kharkiv is 95 kilometers. So the operators of the armed forces of Ukraine have no particular problems with overcoming this distance, given a maximum range of up to 145. From the point of view of the consequences, the situation is critical, sire. Since logistics have been suffering for almost a month, this affects the delivery of products not only to the rear, but also to the front line. Damn, the Russians are getting in on the front and the rear. I tell you, it's a tough time for them down there. We also get to see that on the highway today, there was still more carnage to be seen that is fresh. Here in this clip, we got to see a truck almost careen off the road near to a smoldering wreck of another truck. Check this out. Look at this truck up here. It's going to go any second now. Oh. Oh.
Oh.
Oh, blia!
That's not a good sign.
Oh, it's the devil.
Oh, the devil's in here. Yeah, look at this. Satan Trucking Incorporated.
Oh, another cooked out fuel truck. Oh, they got that music now. Oh, special equipment! And another Kamaz.
Look at that. It was at this point he knew he should have turned around, but he kept going anyway because he balls like that.
Man, he real like that. We also got another clip, apparently letting us hear that Russian authorities have warned against non-essential travel on the M14 highway after reporting remote mining attacks near the Berdyansk area. Officials said drones deployed motion-triggered explosives targeting transport routes. To let y'all know, they're little mines. They just drop them in large numbers by a Ukrainian drone flying overhead. And they lay on the road, and whenever anything drives by, they explode. That's basically what they are. So now the Ukrainians are literally mining the roadways back there, which is getting the situation even more dire for Russia, because if they somehow protect against the drones, they are definitely not going to protect against the mines that they generally aren't going to see until they're right up on top of them. We also got another clip of more trucks burning. Here's one right here. Damn.
Oh, wow. They're about to have a head-on collision, too. That was almost a disaster.
Man, he's flooring it now.
He said, I think it's dangerous around here. I shouldn't be out here. Florida, Ivan, Florida. Get out of here. Come on, quick.
Man, meanwhile, some Ukrainian drone operator, hey, look, he's flooring it. He must be trying to run because he's got vital supplies. Hit them. Like, bro, it's like, man, yeah, I would go nice and slow. I would follow the speed limit because now the speed limit's enforced by drones. We also got to see some kamikaze drones targeting the Russians near Berdyansk. The first one did miss. The second one, though, didn't. Oh, no.
Oh, a dud. Look at that.
They got lucky. Quick, everyone. Back to the Kamaz. Hey! There's another one coming, you idiot!
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
This one looks mean. Oh, no.
Style on him, yo!
Oh, man. He wasted all of his ammunition. Oh, they sound defeated. Oh, he's mad, too.
He's crashing out
mad.
Already. Bro,
He's crashed out.
Bro, I also like how when the second one came in, bro, it was kind of styling on him. You know, it was kind of doing like a little wiggle with the wings and everything. Look at it. Like shimmying around and stuff.
That is crazy. That's apparently the type of drone that they're using right there to hit behind the lines, apparently.
Hold up. I got to go pull this up really quickly, man, because... You know, this is reminding me of something. You know when this Kamaz blew up right here? Like, watch it here when it blows up. like comes apart in a whole bunch of pieces. It reminds me of one of those cartoon cars, you know, where they like slam the door and then like the whole thing falls apart, you know, like a car like that.
Yeah, kind of does actually.
Bro, they hit it, and like the headlights went flying out, and the radiator went out the front, and the tarpaulin went flying in every direction. I mean, watch this, folks. It's literally like a cartoon car coming apart.
Also, by the way, this is the strike right here in Berdyansk that literally inspired that post of the Russians freaking out that you read off earlier. This is the exact attack that inspired that post by the Russians.
Really?
Yeah, this is it right here. This is what literally, it might have been one of the guys from this unit right here that's driving the truck that got hit. They're the ones who got on Telegram, apparently started yapping.
Maybe it was that guy crashing out in the background. That one.
Yeah, it could have been him. He sounds like he could have gone on Yelp or started typing up a bad review.
And then we heard that he went off to the psychiatric facilities after that because the FSB said he wasn't mentally there. We also got to see another clip of Russian logistics getting hit by the Luftwaffe. Geschliffen Leitman! But anyways, here's the clip. Oh, look, it's a little fuel truck. It's a cute one, too. It's like a little short bed one. You know, the Luftwaffe, folks, they really got a keen eye for those Russians.
It's really just the German Air Force, really.
Well, well, maybe. But they're coming on in now.
Probably the reason they named it that and used all that symbology right there is they were trying to get the Taurus missile from Germany, but I think they didn't use the right messaging.
I don't think they did. But they did get the truck. Well, that's the end of that clip. Looks like a dead-on hit. Lastly, the Russians did start to move in some Tor air defense systems into the area in larger numbers, you know, which means they moved like 4 of them into the area of the whole southern front to try and deal with the drones and stop them from getting to the highway. The drones ended up targeting them and blowing them up before they could even stop the drones. So most of the Tors were destroyed outright within the first days that they made it to the southern front. Right now, a lot of people are looking at the situation. They're starting to talk about how screwed the Russians are. Matthew, how many people think that the Russians are screwed? And how screwed do you think they are as well?
Okay, so specifically, Ukraine has begun mining Russia's logistics routes, and this comes on top of the drone attacks that Russia's not able to defend against, which is prompting the Russians to freak out worse than ever. They're now openly demanding that Putin fix the situation for them, and they're being left to their own devices, by the way. Also, Tiger Stack said in the live chat, he said, "Where's the zebra truck?" I hope you have that, by the way, because the Russians are trying to fix the problem in their own creative methods, but if you could grab that, by the way, but they're trying to fix their problem their own creative method, and they're coming up with some pretty sad stuff. There it is right here. This is what the Russians are coming up with because Putin won't help them. So they're trying to make their trucks invisible to the drones. So they said, let's make it in a zebra color, because zebras blend in with the environment inside of Ukraine with the greenery. Black and white would blend in perfect. So plot twist, it didn't blend in perfect. But back to the question, though. Russia is now closing its highways after Ukraine has begun dropping mines from their drones that are motion activated on the sides of their highways. So what are your thoughts? It looks like 79% said that's great, logistics are screwed, 7% said that's bad and endangers civilians, and 6% said I'm 50-50 on this one. So in this case, we have literally limitless video evidence that the Russian military has basically taken over the highways behind the lines and the rear lines of occupied Ukrainian territory, and they're being used largely for military logistics transport. So that makes them valid military targets. There may be civilians that use the highway from time to time, but here's the catch, though. In war, you know, you might want to steer clear of where the military's at. So if the civilians don't want to get hit, they might want to get off the military target, which is the highway. They might want to use the back roads. That might be better. So I would say that it's a good move. Logistics are pretty much screwed at this point. Between the drone attacks and the mines, I'm not sure how Russia's going to overcome that. Ukraine's really cornering them at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
Hey, comrade, you know, I've got a great idea how to conceal against drones. What is your idea, Ivan? Well, what if we took that razzle-dazzle camouflage that some U.S. warships had in the Second World War, and we put them on our supply trucks, driving on the highway? Well, what is the idea of them? Well, at sea, the idea was that painting up a ship like this would break apart its pattern and make it hard to tell what direction and speed it was traveling in. So, I'm thinking What if we paint this shit up to look like this in the middle of a green environment in the summer? You know, and clearly a drone will be able to tell that it's moving down the highway at a specific speed because they're guiding it all the way into its target. That's a great idea for them. Paint it black and white. Like it's like,
It's like, where the hell did they even get all that paint from? It's like, that's a hell of a lot of paint they used in this truck. And also, can you imagine how long it took them to do this right here? It probably took them like a whole week to pull this off. Like, I'd imagine, unless they were working around the clock. They could have been like, you know, you never know. The commander might have been holding them at gunpoint or something, saying, paint the zebra pattern, damn it. And they were like, okay, we'll get it done in 24 hours. It's like, I think they made their situation worse. This thing's going to stand out like a sore thumb. Like, can you imagine that, seeing that from a drone? This thing's like a freaking beacon. Like, here I am. It's like, this thing is very visible.
Man, also on top of that, it's like this thing, I'm guessing it really is supposed to be the razzle dazzle camo. This thing works because it would kind of throw off a submarine commander on the speed at which the ship was traveling, because they didn't really have because it was a camouflage pattern that's really confusing to the eye. It would kind of make it a little bit more difficult to fire off a torpedo in theory. But the problem with that idea on a truck in the modern day is that a drone isn't moving in a kinetic line at a fixed rate of speed to the target like a torpedo. The drone can just slow down and speed up and then turn left and right to maneuver to hit the truck. So it's not like this is doing anyone any good. I mean, it's literally just wasting paint and time to get the truck blown up anyways, and now it just looks like a zebra. It was completely pointless. So I would have to say, folks, this thing's horrendous, and this is going to do nothing. Russian logistics are done for at this point, without a shadow of a doubt. But moving us on out of this news in the southern front, it is time for us to get to the rest of what we have from around the region today. Moving us on up into our location unknowns, we did get to see this one Buhanka get blown up that had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 independent electronic jammers on top, still blown up.
That's crazy. They still couldn't pull it off. Honestly, I didn't think those were antennas at first. I thought they were some type of like, like drone like catcher or something like that, designed to like hit the drone or to like not make it hit the Buhanka. I couldn't tell. That's really crazy. They couldn't take it out even with all those antennas.
They had 11. They were just too short of a baker's dozen of electronic warfare antennas. Still couldn't stop a drone. Also, on top of that, why in the world does this Buhanka have a lazy eye where like one headlight's like half open and the other one's full open?
Honestly, this is the van that those schizophrenics talk about, pull up outside their place when the government's watching them and stuff, is one with antennas on it like this, like the FBI truck. This is the one that they talk about. They say the FBI's outside and they'll like show a picture of a truck looking like that. It's like that's what they think. The schizophrenics are like having a frenzy right now.
Man, bro, they losing it on Gaw. We also got another bit of news in our casualty report over the past 24 hours. Oh, wait a minute. What the hell? That's not the casualty report. Hold up. Let me go to Twitter, folks, because weirdly enough, that reposted from the Percross front. I don't know why. Because I copied the casualty report from Kyiv Independent today and put it there, and apparently it was the wrong link that was put there. That's odd, folks. That's peculiar. But here we are. Here's the casualty report. No Bobcats.
Oh no, I can't believe it. How's this possible? They're hitting so many special equipments behind the lines. I couldn't have a special loss report? Come on now.
Man, it is a tragedy. And according to Mr. Easy Keeper of the Records, 324 auto and fuel tanks is the 7th highest daily loss, and the war total has exceeded 100,000. May totals to date for categories including artillery, MLRS, air defense, and special equipment exceed recent months. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to confirm that 960 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 11 APCs, 324 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 28 artillery pieces, 1,750 drones, 2 MLRSs, and that was it. Still a pretty decent day, just no Bobcats, which is kind of a shame. Moving us on out of that, we've also been able to see throughout the rest of the front, moving us on down and into the affected areas, that around the area of Konstantinivka, Ukrainian soldiers had to evade Russian artillery fire today.
Десь оптика круже. Хуй, тихо, я подивлюсь.
We see him moving out into the street to try and get a better look down it. And then they can hear artillery possibly coming in, and it explodes right next to him.
God. Oh my gosh.
And they're back into shelter.
Damn. I wonder if that guy's okay. I didn't know you could survive that close to a shell hitting.
They think it's a mortar shell. I think it's a mortar shell as well. But yeah, I mean, that's still crazy, regardless of it being a mortar shell or not. That was a pretty big explosion. I mean, right next to them, and somehow none of them got ended by the shrapnel coming out of that.
Yeah, that's wild. I can only imagine. Hopefully, that guy doesn't have like internal bleeding or something like that, because that shockwave from that close is probably horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like the wind was knocked out when he got back up. I mean, listen to him. Like, here it comes right when he gets up right here.
Oh,
yes,
geez.
listen to that. It sounded like he got the wind knocked out of him from it. But, I mean, that's a pretty good outcome. He could have been killed.
Yeah, I guess better he survived. That was a close call.
Man, that was insane, honestly. A really close call. We also got to see the Ukrainians making their way into the city in an M113 today as well, also showing the venture into the city after we just saw what it was like to be on the front at the city. So here's the M113 making its way in, getting hit by a myriad of drones. We can then see the Ukrainians medically evacuating some of their own. The M113 still getting hit in the midst of the medical evacuations. And then we get to see the full clip. Believe it or not, this is the Ukrainian police. We see them here showing off some of the wounds that some of their soldiers have suffered, and them being put into a pre-assembly area for medical evacuation. And now we see the M113 on its way in to get the wounded and evacuate them from the front.
Is that the Ukrainian? Is that the Ukrainian vehicle right there? Like a Russian creation.
Yeah, that's a Ukrainian vehicle. That's a U.S. provided M113 that they've outfitted.
Wow, it's like, oh, that's it right there too.
Yeah, that's it.
That's wild. That thing's like they put like spiderweb bush like objects all over it.
Apparently, they kind of work, from what we can tell, because the M113 is kind of dealing with this exceedingly well. Now we can see that they medically evacuated them to a hospital in the rear line, and they were able to receive medical treatment for their wounds. But a pretty wild clip just showing the venture into Konstantinivka to pick up the wounded, and also the artillery that's raining around down on the city as the Ukrainians continue to defend the region. We've also been able to see on the Pokrovsk front as well, Russian forces getting hit within this area, which was the clip that was in the stay of the casualty report in the location unknowns. The 59th Brigade has been targeting and destroying Russian vehicles and personnel to a high rate within this area, and have been continuing to slow the Russian advance as a result of the significant losses. Large amount of ATVs. Oh, a lot. Oh my God, that was a terrible Lotta.
That's a chop shop Lotta right there. They chopped off the rear of it. Oh, I didn't think that was a Lotta. That was a thing. Oh, look at those. There's another Lotta getting hit.
Man, this is like a whole Rodnik section just in what's getting blown up. I mean, there's like 6 abominations in that clip. We also got to see down in the Donetsk area, the Russians using a Wild Hornet for drone defense, although it's kind of like their version of a Wild Hornet. But here it is. We've never seen one of these before, so this might be an innovation in Russian drone technology. Also, by the way, this was used by the Chechens, just to make that clear.
Oh, dang. Yeah, that's basically a direct ripoff of the Ukrainian's Hornet.
Damn, bro. Can that guy breathe well enough?
I'll tell you what, those Chechens, I tell you.
Man, I heard, folks, that this guy was selected as the #1 warrior because when they put him in hand-to-hand combat in an enclosed room, he apparently breathed all the air in, his opponent suffocated in there. I mean, dang. But anyways, moving us on out of that, we've also been able to see that down near the Novopavlivka front, a BM-21 Grad was also hit by the Ukrainians as well today. These are actually somewhat rarer losses. We don't hear of a lot of MLRSs getting hit on the regular, so seeing that some of the very few remaining 127mm Grads getting destroyed is a pretty nice sight to see.
Also, by the way, just a piece of breaking news while we're watching this clip right here. Apparently, an aircraft here in the United States was just suffered an attempted hijacking, apparently. And it looks like they squawked a code for the hijacking. But thankfully, it looks like they subdued the person. They said law enforcement, so it looks like the air marshal was on board, apparently subdued the guy before he was able to get into the cockpit. So they said it was a level 4 security incident. It was a flight from Chicago O'Hare to Minneapolis that diverted to Madison, Wisconsin, apparently. So it looks like, thankfully, they were able to stop the idiot, whoever it was trying to get to the cockpit. Apparently, the air marshal jumped into action.
What aircraft is that? Can we see that on flight radar right now?
Let me see if I have the code or the flight code here. Let me see if I can get this real quick. Let's see here. Hijacking. Let me see if I can get this real quick. Let's see here. So apparently, they're alleging that it was a United Airlines flight, 2005. So see if you can spot that. I'm not sure if it's going to be on transponder anymore, but it looks like it's already landed. It was diverted to Madison, in Wisconsin, so it should be on the ground. So I'm not sure if the transponder is going to be on.
It looks like it isn't on because I had to go pull it up really quick. But there it, let's see here. This is the one right here, actually. This is 29th of May. This is United Airlines Flight 2005. It was diverted to Madison. Let's take a look at that. Let's look at the playback here. So the aircraft went airborne, flew on out of Chicago O'Hare, made it to the area just near Beaver Dam. And then that's, I believe, when it squawked the emergency, because we can see it diverting rapidly to Madison, Wisconsin, and then landing there. So pretty interesting to see.
Does it say when they started squawking the 7500 code? It doesn't look like the flight radar replay has that.
Doesn't look like they do. I'm just assuming it's when they started to divert towards Madison, probably somewhere around this point.
Yeah, well, definitely a scary situation. Thankfully, these days, though, there's some pretty strong doors that they put on those cockpits, and also there's rules in place where one pilot has to do like a certain thing, like they have to bring the flight attendant if one of the pilots have to use the restroom and stuff like that, so that way the pilot's not left alone by himself in the cockpit. So there's a whole bunch of things in place to prevent that. Thankfully, there was an air marshal on board because not every single flight has an air marshal, and sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. So thankfully, there was one on this one. So I'll be curious to see what individual and what his connection was that was doing that. Was he a sleeper agent or who was it?
Might have just been a nut, like there's a lot of crazy people who get on planes these days. I'm sure many of y'all have run into them on your flights. They just haven't tried to hijack the plane. But there's a lot of crazy people out there. It might have just been someone who was, insane, like that one person on that one video, that woman who was like, whatever that is back there, it isn't real. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, could have been someone like that maybe. But anyways, moving us on out of that interesting news that just happened here in the United States, it is time for us folks to move on and up into Kyiv to cover the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of 1556. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці, українки, сьогодні кілька важливих речей. Перше, ми маємо інформацію від розвідки щодо підготовки Росією нового масованого удару. Будь ласка, зважайте на повітряні тривоги, бережіть життя. Наші служби оперативні, підготовлені, повітряні сили та інші захисники неба працюватимуть 24/7, як і завжди. Тематика ППО, необхідність і надалі допомагати Україні з захистом неба – це ключовий пріоритет наш. Вдячний кожному партнеру, всім лідерам, всім державам, які готові допомагати і хто повністю виконує домовленості. Програма Pearl має працювати, це стосується і Сполучених Штатів, і Європи. Кошти європейських партнерів та інших наших друзів ми акумулюємо, щоб купувати ракети, зокрема для Петріотів. І достатнє постачання залежить від Америки. Сподіваємось, що Україну будуть чути. Була сьогодні доповідь міністра закордонних справ Андрія Сибіги. Всі наші дипломатичні представники повинні зосередитись. Результати потрібні. Фактично, кожен день ми комунікуємо з тими партнерами, які можуть підтримати нас. Вчора дійсно хороше рішення зі Швецією, сьогодні є рішення Японії, зокрема про Pearl. Ми готуємо ще нові рішення в Європі, щоб була наша власна європейська антибалістика. Наступними тижнями заплановані важливі зустрічі та перемовини щодо цього. Щойно я говорив з президентом Румунії. Російський дрон ударив по житловому будинку в Румунії у ніч на цей день. Люди постраждали. Ми бажаємо найшвидшого одужання. Ми домовились з президентом, з Нікушором, що Україна підтримує Румунію в цій ситуації. І наші команди, наші військові, наші спеціалісти попрацюють над тим, щоб посилити захист неба. Підтримуючи одне одного зараз, ми робимо сильніше наші спільні позиції. Це дуже важливо. Була також тривала нарада з військовими, головнокомандувач Збройних сил Сирський та начальник Генштабу Гнатов. Обороняємось активно і важливо, що продовжуємо досягати наших цілей, передусім російської логістики та російської нафтової галузі. Все що ускладнює для Росії ведення війни, допомагає наближати мир. Пам'ятаємо, що нам потрібно, захищаємо Україну. Слава Україні!
And Hirom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1556 of the news from around the world. And I've got to say, folks, that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many people being here with this channel and enjoying it over the course of this night. We have been able to run 2 hours and 10 minutes of news tonight, and 110,000 people have joined us over the course of those 2 hours, and 17,100 people were here at the peak. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to have had each and every single one of y'all here tonight. And I have to say that I hope that our news coverage was good, sound, and our analysis was also of sound quality as well. I really hope so, because tonight, folks, I haven't said it through the whole show during the news, but I have been battling some pretty decent, like, nausea and dizziness. And so hopefully it hasn't really come through in my coverage or analysis or any of my statements, because it is really getting me at this point right now. I don't know what it is. Like, it could be the weather. It could just be anything. Man. I don't know.
We're just tired of all this winning. Like, it's just so much winning, and we're sick of winning at this point. Like, it's making Andrew physically sick at this point. Like, top 25 in the nation. I mean, we just can't handle this.
I think it's the mind games that the president's playing on me that's like leading to the dizziness. I just can't. I can't get like, I've been spun around so many times with the foreign policy situation. I can't even, like, my brain isn't even thinking straight anymore.
Man, he didn't tell us the discombobulator was his mouth.
Bro, they just had a megaphone on that drone over Venezuela. Some of the greatest people have been calling me up all over, and everyone down there went, duh. Like, and then they're like, go get him.
I gotta tell you that I'm always the best of those one-liners. I'm always the best. They're telling me, they said, "Sir, you gotta be a comedian, sir." I said, "I can't do it. I'm too busy on YouTube reporting news. I'm a newsman. It's a news anchor. That's what they call it. It's like a ship. You need an anchor for that. You need to be able to put the anchor down and weigh anchor." They say you weigh it every time to make sure it's the right weight. That's what they tell you, sir.
Man, bro, someone's about to come in here and go, "The TS is strong with this." It's like, bro, like, it's like, man, but honestly, I gotta say, folks, that, like, the phrase TDS is like the new false flag hot word of the day. Like, it's just like everybody wants to throw that out left and right. It's not like, honestly,
could you imagine being a grown man and saying TDS? Could you imagine that? It's like something a 10-year-old would say. He said, "You have Matt derangement syndrome." That's what they call it. It sounds like a medical disorder, but it's a psychological one. It's psychological. It happens to be something that people are suffering from that are in a cult. That's what they say, sir. Sir. Independent thinking. They don't know what that is. It's not in Webster's. You can't look it up in Webster's. You just got to know what it is. They said, sir, Webster, sir.
The political stupid phrases have got to stop. It's like, they have to stop. I'm so tired, folks, of hearing stupid political phrases like panicking and TDS and, like, SJW and shit. It's so old. Like, it's like, and it gets so overused. Like, literally everybody who's political, it's like they're like a baby, you know? It's like, they're like, ha! Cuckoo, caca, genius, ha, cuckoo, caca, genius. It's like, so dumb. Like, it's like the stupidest thing. And instead of them ever having a legitimate argument, like a counter argument, they just go to that. It's like their little refuge. Kind of like how, like, let's see, what was it? Oh yeah, like the one that we dealt with for the past 3 years when Biden was president was just people who would come in, and when we'd say, like, "Oh, we don't think this is a good move," they go, "MAGA." It's like, no. It's like, no. It's like, how about you actually come up with something mentally good instead of being brained? You know, like, I gotta say, folks, we need to fight a war in this country, like, on an institutional level, against like brain dead stuff. People have got to start learning some critical thinking. It needs to start at the public education level. We've got to teach people how to use their brain. That's been a problem in this country. The standards need to be high. There needs to be no laxness on the rules. It is what it is. Kids are either going to learn to have some brains or the country is doomed. And there's going to be no in between. That's what I think.
Well, to make the kids have good brains, so that way they can make sure that they're coming up to the right conclusions. You know, have to make sure that they're going to get their fruits and vegetables on a daily basis for lunch. Make sure you steer clear of snakes, kids. Don't pick up snakes by the tail and try to drag them out like they're a pet exhibition at the zoo. Don't do that.
We're going to war against fat and stupid kids, but not against the kids themselves, but whatever makes them fat and stupid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a couple of black racers on the front porch, and that ought to really fix the damn problem. Like, really, when you come to think of it, I don't really think that guy's done much of anything at this point to really try and fix that whole problem. He changed the gut stuffing, calorie-inducing French fries from getting cooked in vegetable oils, and now they get cooked in tallow, and it kind of really hasn't done a lot. Fries are still kind of unhealthy.
Something they didn't tell you in school when the last president came out and said Corn Pop was a bad dude. Corn Pop's not a bad dude. He was actually the first man to create cereal, Mr. Corn Pop. That's what he was. And they were fighting a war against Mr. Corn Pop while he was trying to save the children. That's why he thought he was a bad man, because he was a bad president.
I gotta be honest with you. One time when I was going down around Philadelphia back in the day when the Kennedys really had a name, I actually saw that Joe Biden guy, and he was sitting around. He was messing with this guy who had a big chain and some straight razors that were put in some rain barrels. And honestly, I got a couple of those. I thought it was interesting, and I cut myself with them, and I got rigor mortis. And basically, the moral of the story is, folks, if you see a rusty razor at the bottom of a rain barrel, you gotta try it out. You're really missing out. But anyways, also someone said, "Do you have a voucher?" Sadly, I don't. I find that voice very hard to do. I tried to do it way back in the day off of air to figure out if I could do it. I actually can't do that one. There's a couple of a Fauci.
A Fauci. I don't really know what he sounds like, really, to even imitate him.
He had this interesting way of speaking because he had this vocal issue thing, and so it made his voice very distinct. It was gravelly sounding, but I couldn't do it. I tried to do it, I just couldn't. It hurt my voice too much to try and imitate it. But I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the question.
Someone in the chat said, "This is just stupid." Well, hell, you ought to like it then.
I mean, isn't this like top quality entertainment? I mean, shit, it's better than Fox and CNN.
I'm saying that they're pretty stupid. Say, I like the stupid content. Isn't that like and like goes together? They say, like, sir, like and like. They said opposites attract, sir. If you're smart, you should like stupid. Smart people don't like me. That's what they're telling me. I don't know why. I've never figured out why. I've been trying to put my best people on that issue, and they can't quite figure it out. We might need a committee on that one. Why don't smart people like me? It's a strange thing. They must be stupid.
Honestly, they must be. It must be a real tragedy, honestly. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the questions. What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our super chat. Also, real quick, by the way, I had to put up a little brother versus brother poll right here because we love these polls right here. Who does the voice better? And I didn't specify the voice. I left that very ambiguous. Looking back at it, that was a bit of a blunder, but you can't fix errors in the past. Leave the past in the past. 63% said Matt and 37% said Andrew. So I'd assume most people were talking about the RFK one, I would assume, because that's the one that seems to get most people's attention, actually, for the most part. So I don't know why, but I will say this. I'm not one, I'm usually a humble person. I like to be humble. But I will say, for some reason, I'm naturally good at that voice. I hope one day when I'm older, I don't start sounding like that. Hopefully it's not a bad sign of things to come. But I think I might actually do that voice better, possibly. But Enforcer, what say you?
Damn, I thought I was doing it pretty good, with the whole, the stuff thing. But apparently not. But it is what it is. I guess you're getting both of them anyway, so you better just like them. But anyway, so that we are on to the next one.
And moving into our super chat questions here, our first super chat of the last segment, by the way, is going to go to none other than Hokey Redneck. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that $100 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And that's very generous of you. He said, make auto-loading shotguns with targeting.
Honestly, you know what I was thinking would maybe be a smart idea is to make a belt-fed shotgun, because then, there's really no ammunition, capacity that's, say, mag limited, because magazines are never going to be able to hold enough shotgun ammo. So if you had a belt fed shotgun, if that was somehow doable, which I think it probably would be if we put enough engineering into it, you could definitely try and make a shotgun that have enough ammo that you could just mass saturate an incoming target well enough to eventually get it. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, but I think that would be a pretty good idea. An automatic belt-fed shotgun. Basically a machine gun, but instead of firing rifle cartridges, it fires shotgun shells instead. But a huge thing, Steve, and also Hoogie Redneck said full choke. Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. Full choke would be the best move for that, to try and get the widest spread. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one.
Man, you remember those like Saiga shotguns, the Russian ones? Like, I remember when those were legal here in the United States, and they were all over gun stores all over the place in Alabama. Didn't they make those illegal?
I think it was the sanctions that were put onto them after the invasion in 2014 into Ukraine that stopped them from being around a whole lot.
Yeah, I remember those were all over the place. I remember seeing those. I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. It's like an automatic shotgun. I'm like, that's kind of fascinating. They were actually in stores, like in Alabama at least. They were in gun stores around there. And then they just disappeared one day. And I assume that's because they outlawed them or something. That's my best guess.
So it looks like someone actually made a homemade belt-fed 12-gauge shotgun. So this is actually doable. So I would say that that's probably the future, because think about it. You can put as many shotgun shells on a belt as you want, and if it's like a normal belt-fed shotgun, you could link the belts together to make sure that it never runs out of ammo. In theory, if it started to run low on one belt, just link another to it. You never have to really reload the thing, and so you have the automatic shotgun aspect. You have a lot of ammo to go with it. And with those two things combined, you certainly can. Well, you could miss, but the chances of that are going to be a lot less. So I hope that addresses that well, in my opinion, because I think that would be a great step forward in a very easy solution to field for infantry. It's just mass issuing belt-fed shotguns that are automatic. So a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from none other than Con45. And thank you very much, Con, for the generous $50 support. And we do appreciate that. He said, my friends, Russia's most popular military blogger, Rybar, is now crying that there are now 20 to 70 Ukrainian drones to every one Russian soldier on the front lines. And Rybar is whining that Russia's defeat is inevitable. And have you ever, this loser, Rybar? Honestly, that's all the Russian bloggers. They're all losers. Like they're all of this mentality of like glazing the Putin regime, trying to pretend like Putin's looking out for their best interests. They're just propagandists by every measure of the term. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I haven't really heard of that one in particular. There's a lot of Russian military bloggers out there, but I've never really considered them to be in that high of standing, because like I think some people always kind of misunderstand this in the modern day. Russians are Russians, we're Americans. Like, a lot of people can say, oh, everybody gets along, it's the governments. No, those people don't get along with us. Like, most people in Russia don't like the United States, if they were actually honest about it. Some of them might like the United States as an idea, like a place to visit, or a thing to think about. But if it actually got down to cultural and political differences, they generally don't like the United States. And that's why, when people are like, well, we should try and understand the Russians and be friends with them, it's like, well, their government isn't, the people aren't. And so, that's kind of the end of the story. You really can't. It's kind of like saying, like, North Korean people actually love America. It's like, why would we think that? Like I know a lot of people like to think that in other countries there's like a freedom of thought like there is in the United States, where, some Americans like will like be simps for Russia, or, like us will be simps for Ukraine. But in a place like North Korea, they're raised into an indoctrination system that starts at birth to make them hate the United States of America and look at the United States as imperialist warmongers, and to also make them worship the Kim dynasty. So why in the world would they ever love the United States of America? I mean, some of them do, because they end up starving, and then they end up defecting, and then they make it to South Korea or the United States. But for the larger part, most of them are actually going to hate the United States of America, because they've literally been indoctrinated since birth to believe that the United States is the fault of all of their problems in North Korea. So that's kind of the issue there that I have with things like that is like, it's like, do I like any Russian military bloggers? Not really, because they support Russian interests. I support American interests. Clearly an impasse, and I'm not really going to like them or respect them for that purpose. But a big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep them running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from LSA Animal Audio. And thank you very much for that $50 support, by the way. And we do appreciate that very much. It's extremely generous. They said, number one, the Strait and nuclear material are separate issues. Number two, we can start fighting for the Strait today. Number three, negotiating the nuclear material will be easier after we start fighting for the Strait. And four, back to pre-war is better than status quo.
I would agree with that 100%. That's exactly what we've been saying on air. Is that the nuclear issue doesn't need to be dealt with right now, at least. We need to get into a position where they have to meet our demands on the nuclear issue because they have no leverage over us, and then we can continue the war on however long we need to be able to achieve that objective in the future. So I'd 100% agree with you on that, LSA Animal Studio, because that's exactly what my point and premise is on air as well. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a huge thanks to you for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And so huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Kevin RM. And thank you very much, Kevin, for that 50 as well. We do appreciate that. He said, when do we just accept the Fallout universe is pretty much canon, but that we might be getting injected into it rapidly instead, LOL. You mean like Fallout, like the Fallout 3 and 4 and stuff like that, like the video games he talking about?
Yeah, he's talking about that.
I don't think we're gonna come to that, honestly. Like, I think it'll probably be worse than that. Like, here's the way I think about it. If there's a nuclear exchange like that, like something that's like modeled after the video game or something like that, that's pretty quick. Like, it's a one and done thing. You either survive it or you don't, and then you deal with the aftermath. Like, it's a one and done thing. With a major war that gets into like ground fighting, missile attacks, drone attacks, and stuff like that, that is a long-term slog that's going to cost a ton of lives over the course of years and years and years. So I don't know. Like, to me, I find them both equally pretty bad, personally.
I would say that we're probably never going to enter the Fallout kind of a world. Like at least the timeline, because I just don't think that things are going to be working out that way in the long run, especially since you probably are well versed with the lore to say that. So I don't think I'll have to explain it a whole lot, because you have to clearly know it to be able to bring that up. I don't think there's going to be a lot of lore elements, like for example Europe going to war in the Middle East to control the oil there, because they're relying on it. They are doing that now, and if they're not doing that now, they're not going to do that ever. Also, the other thing is that the problem with the Fallout universe is that the Fallout universe relies on, back in the day, nobody inventing semiconductors. So the computers would always remain incredibly large, clunky, and not as advanced as they are in the modern day. And so we've already well departed, really, from the Fallout sort of a universe. And on top of that, if I'm not mistaken, I don't really think there was any, like, sentient artificial intelligence for the larger part in any of the Fallout games or any of the Fallout canon lore, if I remember correctly. It was like kind of like automatons that were generally programmed to have certain sorts of outputs and certain things to certain sort of situations, but I don't really think they had any AI per se, because the computers weren't advanced enough for it. So I would say generally, there's some similarities here and there, but I would hope that we wouldn't go down that route. And also on top of that, if a nuclear war happens, the truth is, folks, is that life just sucks for a lot of people. It's not going to be like the Fallout world where it's like, the whole world's like some sort of a desert. Oh well, yeah, man, they just brought up the synth, bro. Well, I forgot about the synths, dude. Like, I forgot about the synths from Fallout 4, man. Like, totally forgot about them.
Synths, man. Remember, there was the people that were like the elite, that were the I think they were called the Institute, if I remember that properly. And they were underground. They were like the elite. And then there was everybody else that was just left for themselves. Honestly, that was kind of like a fair critique, actually. It was kind of a little bit, like, accurate. Like, I feel like it might be like that. Like, not to, like, pretend like a video game's real life or something like that, but it does seem like there's the people that are definitely the small group of haves, and then there's a huge group of have-nots, and it's starting to get worse.
I think it's really something that they subverted the entire government of Diamond City because the mayor was a synth the whole time.
Man, honestly, I don't know what it is, but Fallout 4, like, even though it was a sort of like a depressing, like, a setting for the thing, it was kind of like a calming game for some reason. I don't know why.
It was kind of calming. The one thing I hated, though, was those mutant, like, bombers. Like, you know, the ones I'm talking about, you know, like you would come up on some random like mutant group, you'd be like, oh, this is gonna be easy. You shoot one of them, you start hearing that beeping, and then you see that red flashing thing coming off his chest as it's running at you. Dude, I hated those so much because they'd always get me. I never stopped them before they could blow up.
Yeah, yeah, it was always a pain. I hated that.
Man, honestly, man, for real. But beyond that, though, I do thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Truckin' Chef. And thank you very much, Truckin' Chef, for that $50 support as well. And he said one more thing. He said, Enforcer Matt, starting to get into guns. And your honey badger sounds great. And also, it's a very nice gun. I like it a lot. It's just the only problem is now it's an SBR, so now there's a whole bunch of paperwork involved with it if you want to move. But he said, I want a 10 gauge shotgun, and is that better than the 12 gauge for punch? And what's a good pistol with a punch? Completely self-defense. Take the pistol in the truck. And I would say this, the Honey Badger is a completely unnecessary purchase. Like, I will admit that. Like, the Honey Badger was just something I've always wanted, like, personally. Like, it was like one of those holy grail purchases for me. So, it's obscenely expensive, and I will never spend that much on a gun ever again in my life, or pretty much anything ever again in my life, when it comes to something that's like a, I guess you could say, what, a liability, I guess you could say. It's not really an asset, it's more of a liability. That's the most I'll ever spend on something like that. But it does hold its value pretty decently, and also it's a very cool looking gun, and it's very unique. You'll never really see another one that's quite like it, at least with the colors and stuff on it. But with shotguns, sadly, I don't know a whole bunch about shotguns. That's Andrew's wheelhouse. But for pistols, though, I can recommend you a good pistol. The best pistol that I can recommend for self-defense is a Glock. And some people hate Glocks because they call them the Tupperware guns. They're made of polymer, plastic. But me personally, I've always found that Glocks work every time I need it, and they never fail me. So I have the 43X for concealed carry on my person, and then I have the 19X for car carry on top of that. And also, I have one more for the house, and then I have a couple of rifles. So that's what I would recommend. A good 9mm is all you need for self-defense. 9mm with hollows. That's what I do. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, to answer the question about shotguns, I would say that a 10 gauge is good, but generally I go with 12 gauge because 12 gauge is pretty easy to find shells for in like most stores around. I haven't really looked for 10 gauge because I've never owned a 10 gauge before. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, like the ammo to get. It's just that I have never really looked at it a lot to know if it's incredibly common. So I usually go with 12 gauge because it's more of the universal sort of a shotgun shell gauge to be able to find. And I wouldn't go with anything smaller though than 12 gauge. Like anything that gets smaller than that, like I've just never really dealt with it a whole lot. I saw someone bring up like 410. I just don't really like the 410 stuff. It's cool, but it's really hard to find the cartridge, or the shells for that. So I generally just go with 12 gauges. Now, as far as 12 gauges go, I would say that it really kind of depends on what you want. There's a lot of great semi-automatic shotguns out there. Personally, I would say that the Weatherby SA459 was probably one of my favorites that I ever had. It's a Turkish shotgun, so they're pretty cheap, but it was fairly reliable as well. I didn't really have a lot of issues with it, and I always found it a blast to shoot. There's also Stoker, but Stoker creates like over-unders and side-by-side, so more of like the classic kind of shotguns that you would use for like clay shooting, stuff like that. You know, it's the break-open shotguns with two barrels. They're either side-by-side or they're over-under, so you can get it in either configuration. But I would generally say that a semi-automatic shotgun, Weatherby is a pretty good brand, and they're very affordable, and I never really had a lot of problems with them. They were very good for the price. So I hope that...
You want to know, do you know the most Gucci shotgun? Like me personally, I'm not really a shotgun person because they're short range weapons, and also they have a hell of a lot of kick. So I'm not usually a huge fan of guns with massive kick behind it. I like them to be manageable because usually I'm not really a huge target shooter. Like most of my guns are for self-defense I have. So when I need it for self-defense, I don't want the thing to be jumping around on me like a bull in a china shop or something like that. I don't want that to be happening. So I want something with minimal recoil on it. And also, if you have less recoil, it makes it easier to aim and get, your sights on target too, especially if you're nervous and you're like shaking and stuff like that because your adrenaline's going. You don't want like, a bazooka in your hands. At least I don't personally. But Terran Tactical, like, I'm sure you've heard that company. They make an automatic shotgun, or at least one it's not automatic, but semi-automatic. That's really, really cool. But Terran Tactical, everything from them's like expensive as hell for the most part. But they make some pretty cool shotguns.
Let me see here. Is it this one?
Let's see. No, it's not that one. It's that other one right there with the mag underneath it.
This one? Or this one?
This one right here. That's a pretty cool thing. I've seen the guy Terran fella himself shooting that one. That's a pretty cool shotgun.
Honestly, man, I thought you were about to bring up like the old tried and true, the Benelli M4, because that's usually one that everyone says, oh, it's so good. Honestly, this is just let me go pull up a Weatherby SA459, because when you see it, it actually looks just like a Benelli. Well, kind of like a Benelli, but let me go get this thing. So, and when I say kind of, I mean like, creative license there. Like, I gotta make this clear before we show it. We see people like, hell no, you can't compare that thing to a damn Benelli. But let me see. So this is a Weatherby SA459. And generally, the design is pretty similar, rather than the little folding, well, kind of like the sliding stock that you get, and a couple of the minor features. It's pretty similar to it. And, I mean, these things way beat out the Benellis in price. These things, like when I got my Weatherby SA459, like 5 years ago, this thing was $450. I would assume that nowadays with inflation, it's probably like $550 or $600. But for the inflation that we live in these days, that's not too bad. I think the Benellis are well up above that, if I remember their price right. So I would go with this every day of the week, because reliability-wise, it was pretty good. I think out of the whole time I had it, it only had one misfeed and one jam, and I fired I would say really not hundreds, I fired thousands of shotgun shell rounds through my Weatherby, and it never really had a lot of issues. Even when I wasn't like cleaning it well or anything like that, it would still function. So I was pretty impressed with it. But I hope that does answer your question incredibly well, Truckin' Chef, and I hope that we've both been able to use our individual expertise to answer your question to the best of our capabilities. So big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Moving into our next super chat here, this one is going to go to none other than My Trucking Travels. He puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, as well, for that generous support. He said, thank you for everything, my friend. I hope you are having a great night. Denver to Houston. And take one from the chat, my friends.
Oi, Denver to Houston. That's got to be an interesting route right there. You'd have to drive down here, and then you'd have to drive over here, and then you have to drive down here, I guess. I guess that's the way you would do that on the interstates. But that is a really interesting drive. I wonder what it looks like out there. It's kind of interesting when I think about it, when I look at the whole area that we're in. We're in the only, kind of green forested area in the midst of what is basically an arid desert-like environment out here. I never really think about that because we never really get to leave Salt Lake City hardly at all. But it's really interesting when you think about that, man. We're basically living in the middle of the desert in an oasis nearly.
Yeah, it really is. Well, that's also generally why I wanted the place. I didn't want to live in a desert environment. Like there was other places in Utah that I looked at, and I was like, I gotta have greenery. Like I can't move completely away from that. It's also I think the desert's going to get old pretty quick, so I wanted a mix, and this was the best place to get a mix of both.
Yeah, I gotta say, folks, I'm just not a huge fan of deserts, like myself. And most of the people I know who grew up in the deserts, they weren't really a big fan of them either. They say that, it's always like very bland, dead landscape, and it's very neat for its own ways and biodiversity and whatnot, but it's just not really the place for me. I like forests and whatnot. That's really why I like the Pacific Northwest a whole lot, is that they have these super cool looking forests, like the Gifford Pinchot National Forest. Like these right here, like when I think of forest, this is like my idealistic vision of what forests look like, to me, at least in my head. So, I wish that if it wasn't for the price, folks, I would have loved to have lived in a place like Washington State or Oregon. Also, the gun laws would make it impossible for me to live there unless if I started to get rid of basically every firearm I ever owned. That was also a problem as well. But if it wasn't for the price and it wasn't for that, these places naturally look very impressive to me. And I really like that kind of like wet, like foresty atmosphere they have. It's really cool to me.
I just couldn't do every place has its downsides. Like I just couldn't do the Seattle thing or the Oregon thing. Like it gets too extreme out there. Like there's a lot. Like yeah, I know people out there, because people are going to interpret this as a political comment. But it's like it's kind of a little bit wild, and a little bit crazy. Like the people get a little bit crazy out there. Like I know people that are viewers in the chat right now that live in Seattle, and they'll even say that themselves. They'll say, "Yeah, we got some crazy stuff. Like downtown Seattle is a little bit wild and stuff like that." And also there's some weird laws and stuff in the state like that favor people that are like squatters squatters and stuff like that. Like, there's not a lot of common sense going on, like with some stuff like that. I just don't want to deal with it, me personally. Now, granted, there is a heavy Mormon presence in Salt Lake City, Utah, so that's a little bit different. But I would rather deal with that than deal with, like, people that are kind of lacking common sense to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, it leans like, like if we're being honest, folks. I mean, like the political leaning in Washington is kind of what we were trying to escape in Alabama, because Alabama goes so far right, it goes into insanity for the most part, and then Washington State and Oregon, they start going so far left, they basically start going into insanity, and you kind of can notice that in day-to-day life in some instances, like in Alabama, for example. It's a police state, and basically, like, if you're ever pulled over by the police, you're basically treated like a prisoner off the bat, which is not fun to deal with. And it's also not fun to deal with everything else that goes on in Alabama, which is, there's a whole lot to unpack there. But then you deal with that in the opposite direction. It basically does a 180 for the worse over there for other reasons in those states. And generally, like, the thing that we were looking at Salt Lake City about is that Utah, the state, is a Republican state, but the kind of like politics that goes on at the state level in Utah because of the Mormon presence is basically like Chwala land compared to the rest of the country. Like, they don't really process things, vote on things, and make decisions on things in some cases that are like the rest of the political atmosphere in the rest of the country. So you can be in a city like Salt Lake City and still have, like, really nice public facilities, which you don't really find in Republican states. Pretty decent, like, police presence, but not to the point of security state, or a complete lack of the police like you would find in some of the states like Washington or Oregon, where it's basically like, sometimes anarchy because there are literally no police, and also their policies are very relaxed on how they can work around things. So it's kind of like the middle ground, really, to be honest, of like the kind of political landscape that you find in the country these days. So it's kind of like striking that middle ground, and that's honestly what I like. I don't like it going too far left or too far right. I kind of like it being down the middle, because you find that it's a lot more reasonable of a way to live, and generally the policies are a lot more reasonable and aren't going down insano world one way or the other. So that's why Salt Lake was also a really good pick.
I will say though, if you haven't lived in either, like, for example, Seattle, or like a place like, like backwoods Alabama, if I had to recommend one or the other to you, which honestly each one of them is rather extreme, like it's extreme one way or the other, either place you go, I would probably still recommend probably dealing with Seattle or someplace over backwoods Alabama. Because I remember there was a guy, because I was in court one day, not there because I was in trouble or something. I was there because I was working. But I was in court, and there was this new attorney that was there, and he had just apparently gotten hired by a local law firm, and he was in court in a backwoods place in Elmore County, Alabama. And he walked into the courtroom, and the judge, being a small town judge, immediately recognized he wasn't from there. And the moment the attorney got up to go deal with his case with his client, the judge said, "You aren't from here, are you?" And the guy said, "Excuse me, sir?" And he was like, "You aren't from here, are you? You're a city boy." And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, this place is living up to the stereotypes right now, the way the place is treating people that's like newcomers, like not welcoming. Let's just put it that way, not welcoming, especially the backwood places. Now, if you go to a city, like for example, Birmingham or something like that, it's going to be a little bit different than that. But I mean, there's places in Alabama that are like, the way you see it in movies is the way it still is in real life. It's still got that going in some places.
Yeah, like it's something also, folks, like the anger. Like, one thing I'll say about Seattle, like, I have to say, folks, as far as like the natural beauty around Seattle goes, it wasn't bad at all. Like, let me see where was one of the better neighborhoods. Like, I'm not trying to show a place that's affordable. I'm just trying to show a place that's nice.
Bellevue is pretty nice, but it's expensive as hell.
So let's see. I'll drop y'all down in a neighborhood here. So, well, yeah, this is insanely expensive, but it still looked really nice like this throughout most of the area. Like, it's very lush, very nice. It looks really neat when you're, passing through Seattle or anywhere around the area. And it's like, wow, it's like, this is so nice looking, but, it comes with extremely expensive costs, and also, some really, some really interesting kind of like local politics. Like one thing I have to say, folks, that's my gripe about the state of Washington is the squatters' rights are extremely in favor of the squatter. Like someone can literally just go to your home while you're out of the store, bust open the door, move in and change the locks, and now you have a whole civil dispute going on. You've basically just been kicked out of your house by some person who is basically doing nothing at all rather than just occupying the property. And there's plenty of illegal cases like that going on in Washington State, particularly around the Seattle area. And that's something that I don't really like at all, because if you're a homeowner there, you have to be scared that one day you could come home and now you're in some sort of a civil dispute over adverse possession, because the law generally leans more towards the squatter than the property owner, and that ends up being a whole humongous ordeal. On the other hand, though, you can end up dealing with stuff like in Alabama, say, some absolutely insano stuff. Like I'm just trying to think of like all of the instances of crazy things that would happen in Alabama because of the political like environment there. Let's see, Matthew, what was one of the crazier ones that we could personally attest to?
And what are you asking about now?
Just something that would affect you on the day-to-day life because of the political atmosphere in the state. Trying to think of something similar to the whole squatter rights thing that I was just talking about up in Washington State.
Well, I'll say, really honestly, the thing I noticed, it's probably because I was in the court, so I noticed it a lot more. I'm not sure if it's like this in other states, but there was a hell of a lot of corruption going on, like a lot of corruption. And corruption's everywhere. Like no state's free of that by any means, but it was like a lot of that like good old boy stuff going on. I saw that constantly like happening there. Like basically the people who won in court was the people that knew the judge. Like it was just the way it was. It's kind of like that everywhere to a certain degree, but it was really like that, like blatantly in Alabama, like especially in the backwoods places. Basically, if you knew the judge, you were set. Like the other person was going to lose automatically for the most part. I don't even want to like get into all the stuff that was going on that was worse than that. That was corruption going on. Like there was some very bad stuff that was highly illegal going on in that state in those backwoods courts. Like very bad.
Well, I guess one way to summarize the state of Alabama is that I think every single governor before the current one has been prosecuted and put in prison for their abuse of office. For I think only one of them. Who was it, Matthew? Who was the guy who didn't go to prison? It was only one of them out of like the last several governors. Who was it? Bob Riley? I don't think he went to prison.
I don't have it all straight, to be honest with you.
But many of them were, found to be misusing the office of the governor, like corruption literally from the top down for the most part. The current governor, though, there's been nothing on them. But, when you deal with a system like that, that's basically corrupted from the top down for the most part, when we were growing up there, you start to find out that the law isn't really the law. It just kind of is what it is. And then on top of that, like the political atmosphere that kind of permeated in Alabama leans heavily into aggressiveness, like on the day-to-day dealings with people. Like it was very seldom rare that you would find nice people in Alabama, at least from our personal experience. They were either very cliquey and jaded acting to people, or they were just overtly aggressive. And then there were the people who were very nice folks, some of the nicest you'll ever meet, but those are pretty far and few in between. And that's one of the drawbacks of Alabama. On top of that, Alabama is just like broke poor and in like a regional depression that we've only watched deteriorate as we were growing up. Like when we were kids, we lived in the city of Montgomery, and when we were kids, Montgomery was fine. It wasn't a bad place. Like it was decent. It wasn't the greatest, wealthiest place in America, but it wasn't bad. But by the time we moved out of there and moved out to Birmingham, I mean, Montgomery couldn't have been any worse than it ever was. I mean, the crime was rampant down there. People were dying left and right. The police hardly ever cracked down on any crime that was happening in the streets. It was unreal. I mean, it was literally like Dodge City of the state of Alabama in the Wild West. So then we moved to Birmingham, and then Birmingham started to go downhill after we moved there for a myriad of reasons. But
Man,
still,
I remember like Montgomery was getting so bad. Like there was this place called Roly Poly that made like sandwiches and stuff like that. That was in there. That place had gotten robbed so many times. Like the fellow who was running it, I think eventually became the mayor at some point. But that place got robbed a whole lot. Like it was like the sandwich store. It was like it's like they're robbing the Roly Poly sandwich store. It's like what the hell? It's like, and also hitting it over and over and over again. Like it was just dangerous. Like I knew every time I went there to Montgomery after we moved out of there and to the nearby suburb of Montgomery that going in there was dangerous.
yeah, it was very dangerous. And like and I just got to say, like, all of my experiences personally, and I can only speak to my personal experience because there's some people who say that Alabama's the greatest state in America, and for them it probably is. Like, all of their experiences have been good, they got nothing to complain about. But me personally, speaking from my experience, I didn't really have a lot to speak highly of in Alabama. I had some friends when I lived in Birmingham, still do, and we still talk. I still talk to them from time to time, and they're amazing folks, some of the best people I've ever met. But amongst that way, just to get a group of about 6 people or 7 people that I know from there that are still good friends with me, and I talk to them, everybody else just had it out really for both of us. Like, like when we were in school, none of the kids liked us, none of the teachers liked us, and we would we would go to school. I would try and get along with everyone the best we could, and we just wouldn't blend in. And I mean, the truth is, folks, is that we wouldn't blend in, and we get hated on because we wouldn't drink, and we wouldn't do drugs, and we wouldn't do stupid stuff all the time, and so they hated us. And that was really what it boiled down to. And then the teachers would pick favorites, and because we weren't like the kids just getting into dumb stuff all the time, we weren't the favorites. And that kind of stuff just went on all the time. So you either got to be like a rabble rouser, basically, to get along with most people in Alabama, or you're just not going to get along with anybody. And that's a pretty tough environment to be in, because you just kind of got to accept to be that, or you can't, you're not going to have any social life in Alabama, which is something that's kind of annoying. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $100 support from Zash1911, and thank you very much, Zash, for that very generous $100 support, by the way, and we do appreciate that extremely much. That's very generous. And Zash said, in Massachusetts, I've seen people get off of charges in court and 3 hours later be at dinner with the judge. Now, that's crazy. I can up that one. I can up that one, though, right there. I'm not going to name any names or exactly where this took place, but there was a situation where there was a case going on. It was actually a civil case, and it involved a hell of a lot of money in the case. The judge in the case decided it would be a good idea to have what's known as ex parte communications with one of the counsel. And let's just say that they had a lot of discussions with the counsel, and it turned out that the case was resolved favorably in that counsel's decision based on those out-of-court discussions, which, by the way, is not legal. And the whole case was decided that way just because there was a little bit of a personal connection. So there's a lot of stuff I don't know how bad it is. It sounds like Massachusetts might be somewhat like that a little bit, but I've seen some stuff that would knock some people's socks off. Even worse than that, believe it or not. Enforcer, what say you?
I didn't really hang around the legal system, to my great fortune, a lot while I was growing up. I wasn't the favorite one in that perspective, so I didn't really see a lot of crazy stuff like that. But that is absolutely insane. I'm having a feeling, if I had to take a pot shot at where this was at, it's probably around the Springfield area of Massachusetts, isn't it? Because back in the day, that used to be the mafia hotbed of the state of Massachusetts. So I have a feeling that a lot of that kind of dysfunction is kind of continued to go on until the present day. I'd be shocked if that came out of Boston. Like, honestly, that would be wild, because usually cities have kind of like their own thing going, but not to that sort of a degree. It's more of like an organized sort of corruption. Like the LAPD. Have you heard about the LAPD, Matthew, and how they have like gangs in the LAPD?
Every they're getting publicity about it, but like being a police officer is like being in a clique. Like they don't really snitch on each other and stuff like that. It's like a brotherhood type thing. So it's kind of like that everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, like with the LAPD though, I actually watched a documentary on how that turned into being, and it was because of that tough on crime approach that they had on the 90s, like the anti-gang units, and then the anti-gang units basically started to operate like gangs. That's how that whole Rodney King incident happened, where they just beat the dude on the side of the street nearly to an inch of his life, is because of that like gang mindset that they started to form in those. I forgot what the name of the anti-gang unit was in the LAPD, but that's really where it all stemmed from. And that's why, that's wild when you think about it, folks. The police could be a part of the local gangs, or they might have their own gang within their own police department. That's
You got to remember some of these people, like the gang unit officers and stuff like that. I'm not talking about Los Angeles, by the way, just anywhere. They're kind of rough folks. Like they're kind of people that kind of have like a mentality like a gang member, because you kind of need that to a certain degree. They're dealing with the roughest of the rough. They're dealing with organized crime and gang activity. So it kind of helps to have somebody that kind of knows the organization and the way that kind of stuff works a little bit. You don't want somebody that's like book smart coming up there with glasses talking about, "Excuse me, sir, stop that activity. It's like, that's probably not going to go over well. So some of these people are kind of like a little bit gang-minded that are the officers.
Oh, it's the crash unit. That was it. Yeah, but I mean, honestly, you're probably right with that. Like, it probably takes a certain kind of people. But I mean, like Teddy Roosevelt did his thing in New York as the police commissioner. He like went on beats and stuff like that on the streets and was like actively getting involved in stopping the crime. And he never got involved in any of that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's just the quality, like the character of the people. Yeah, different time, I guess. Also, Teddy Roosevelt was kind of like, an outstanding individual. I would say one of definite great repute in the country. But I also saw everyone say that it's the crash unit from the LAPD. And also, crazily enough, Zash added in that apparently this happened in South Boston. Like this whole incident that he's talking about.
And, oh, goodness.
Wow, that's in the city. That's crazy right there. I would have thought that would have been something in like Springfield or Worcester. I wouldn't think that's something in Boston. That's crazy. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to hear interesting stories like that, because that's actually mind-blowing that kind of a thing would happen in South Boston, of all places. I would have never thought. But a huge thanks to you so much once. You know what's also crazier, Matthew, to think about? Like, this is nuts to me. This is Boston right here. The Battle of Lexington happened in this little town right here, and then the Battle of Concord happened right out here. Like, that's literally, like, that's a suburb now of the city of Boston. Back then, that was like a trek into the country.
Yeah, that's where Paul Revere was riding through in his Hellcat.
Like, he had that scat pack on that thing, bro.
The British are coming, yo!
He's at on guard, cuz they coming. Keep the guns and shit. Man, that's only 16 miles. Like, when you think about that, the ride of Paul Revere, like, when you hear of the story of Paul Revere by, like, Longfellow, like, the poem of the ride of Paul Revere, you always think that it was, like, some sort of a dawning adventure, like a very long-distance jaunt. But it's 16 miles. There's marathon runners, folks, that run 25-mile marathons in a day these days, and they're not doing it on horseback. So when you think about it, like, the ride of Paul Revere wasn't really that long one. I'm not downplaying the importance of it historically, but also he wasn't the only guy who did it. Matthew, that they actually had a couple of runners that helped him with that on a 16-mile journey.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts, really, when you think about it.
This silence.
Man, you said, that's crazy. I was like, yeah, it's crazy, man. It's nuts. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. A huge thanks to you so much once again for support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Kevin Thatcher, and thank you, Kevin, as well, for that $20 support. He said, keep up the great work, guys, and shout out to my girlfriend, Lacey. She's forced to listen to you guys nightly and sometimes falls asleep as she wakes up at 4 a.m. to do nursing work. And LSA, and take one from the chat.
And a big shout out to your girlfriend, Lacey. Patience of a saint. Like, I gotta say, hopefully we don't, like, absolutely, like, make your girlfriend go insane having to listen to us just ramble on air every night for hours about the news. But I do thank you so much, and your girlfriend, Lacey, for watching and enjoying and supporting this channel. And also, very important work to be a nurse. The future of the healthcare of this nation and the welfare of our people lies within the medical staff of this country. So, a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from B. Woodward, and thank you very much, Woodward, for that 20. He said, why is the U.S. tiptoeing around that situation there with the RGC? We are America, the big stick. What the hell, leadership? Stand up for America or stand down. Democracy is here and now.
Honestly, I'd agree with you on that. I don't really know why we're beating around the bush on this whole thing. We ought to just get to it. I thought we were all about winning here in this country. Nobody remembers second. So I think we ought to get to it. I'd agree with you. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Danny McCulkey, and thank you very much, Danny, for that $20 support. He said, forgive me, as I mean no disrespect to America, really are great, but the current leadership is dissatisfying, to say the least. I love the show and appreciate the effort you put in.
I think it's...
I think people can say, generally speaking, like just on a just on a basis of wanting stability and simple, consistent statements, there's definitely like, at least if people disagree, like with your political stance there on that, people can at least agree that it would be nice to have consistent statements that come out and also a consistent strategy. If people say that there is a consistent strategy, they're clearly blinded by political desires at that point, because there's clearly not, and the messaging reflects that. The fact that the messaging is so erratic from day to day that there's clearly no consistent plan. It's like basically kind of like the president said at one point. He kind of just wakes up, and if he feels it in his bones, that's the way it goes, which is an awful way to operate, by the way, in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's very erratic. And, I generally have to say that, unfortunately, the past few years of leadership in this country are certainly not a representation of the United States at its greatest. Is really the United States at its worst. I haven't, like, over the whole time that we've been covering news on this channel, folks, I have hardly seen a moment where I've gone, they actually have a level head on and they're doing good calls and making good decisions. I haven't seen it. And it's very unfortunate because it represents the United States poorly, which is a great nation that is filled with incredibly smart and very wise people. But unfortunately, none of those people are elected to be the president. So, we have to deal with the kind of, half-baked people that we get that are put in charge of the country now, which are, I don't even know where they're from. Like, when you really think about how the hell can you end up getting people like that, I just don't know. And if people don't like that, then they're not going to like it. Honestly, those people might also be a part of the problem, because if they can't understand how bad off the country's been for the past, I would say, 5 years at this point, leadership-wise. It's been starved for actual good, decisive leadership with a head on its shoulders. And then those people are a part of the problem of grinding this country down to a stump. Because if you look at one guy who doesn't even know where he is and he can't even speak a sentence straight, and then another guy who can speak a sentence, but he talks like a 4-year-old and he makes the dumbest decisions in foreign policy you've ever seen. I mean, clearly those people aren't the best picks we could have in the country. There's a lot of people more competent than them. But a huge thanks to you for support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Jeannie, last name Tolls. And thank you very much, Jeannie, for that $20 support. They said, do you think we'll pay the reparations with $250 bills? I don't know. If Iran better not get $1, by the way. If they send Iran any money or releasing their stuff from sanctions, that would be the most stupid thing I've ever seen. Like, that would literally be funding the regime that we just went to war with. So hopefully they don't pay in $250 bills or ones either. Well, that would be funny too. Like, what if the United States just dumps $1 bills like it's at the strip club or something like that? If we're around, it's like, here's your reparations. Here, take these $1 bills, just dump it on the Capitol.
I would have to say, like, I hope we don't give them a dime either. But maybe it will be with $250 bills. I would say, folks, that for someone who should be put on the $250 bill, why don't we consider a real legend of this country, like maybe President Garfield, who was assassinated during his tenure, but was a very good president beforehand. Or President Theodore Roosevelt, or maybe some other significant presidents in U.S. history, or maybe just significant people. Maybe pick a historic figure from the United States of America that we should look at as a moral exemplar. Maybe like a Medal of Honor recipient or something along those lines. I think that
we really don't need a $250 bill, though. It's like, why do we need that? It's like, first of all, it's like, who really uses cash like that anymore? Not a whole lot of people, really. So I thought we just got rid of the penny because they said they were trying to cut down the cost of currency and stuff like that. Now they're going to start printing a brand new bill.
That needs an entire new printing process and everything else, new dyes and everything. Like, it's like, yeah, that seems like a waste of money to me. But maybe there's a reason behind it all. Who knows? But I hope that does address that well. Also, by the way, folks, some people are wondering, why Garfield? Have you ever heard the story, Matthew, of how Garfield became the president of the United States?
Not particularly.
It was actually pretty interesting. He went to the Republican National Convention. I think it was in Syracuse, New York. And while he was there, he was actually there to make a speech to support another candidate for the office. And he stood up and he made a speech, and it was so impassioned, and it was so in tune with like the vision of what America should be and where it should be going, that literally everybody stopped supporting the guy that he was speaking for and put all of their votes in the convention behind him. So he ended up getting the candidacy for the Republican Party that election in 1886 and ended up winning in a pretty decent landslide for the large part.
Well, since we're on these random facts here, let me ask you this. if you have $1 million today and you've saved up $1 million, by the time by the time 2055 rolls around, how much will it be worth?
Probably nothing.
About 300,000.
Damn, that's bad.
Yeah. So if, for example, if you have a Roth IRA and you're somehow able to grow that Roth IRA right now, and you somehow get $1 million in it or something like that, and by the time you get done, compounding your interest and stuff over the years and your gains from your good investments in that Roth IRA, by the time you go to take your disbursements from it, that will be so reduced in spending power that it's going to be a fraction of what you thought it was going to be.
That's tough, man. That's not good, I don't think. I think everyone can agree on that. But with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
So our next one is going to go to none other than Adam McLean, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Adam, as well, for that $20 support. He said, is it possible that Putin could be replaced before a full-on Russian revolution takes place?
It's possible if a coup has the right kind of ingredients to it, he could be overthrown largely peacefully without a revolution occurring, or it might turn into a civil war. In a nuclear civil war in Russia, we don't really know what that would turn into. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Truck and Chef, and thank you, Truck and Chef, as well. He said, good evening, enforcers. And what do you think that the Ukrainians make a beeline to Melitopol and cut off the whole southern side? Side note, I saw a train in Wyoming outside of Cheyenne full of lights, and at least 8. What might that train be?
Probably a maintenance away train, I would assume. Usually they're lit up quite a lot to be able to have some good visibility for the maintenance away workers as they're working with the train and around it. So that's what I would generally think on that one. And let's see. If they if they made it to Melitopol and they cut off the rest of Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea, the Russians would be screwed at that point. Supplies would literally not exist anymore, and they'd probably have to start heavily considering a retreat or a stand of the last man that would probably end in a blistering surrender. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And also, really quickly, I gotta say, folks, like people who are dissing on folks in the chat have got to stop. Like I see someone going on an endless rant about how much they dislike people from the countryside. That's got to end. We're not going to be having that here. Everyone in the country has their part to play, and trying to act like a group of people in the country are subhuman just because they live in the city or the country is an absurd notion and a divisive idea. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Ella MC Wills NAFO, and thank you very much, Ella, as well, for that support once again. And Ella said, but sir, the Dow's over 50,000, sir. Everything's going to be just fine. Obliat. Thanks again, once again, enforcers. You guys rock. LLTLSA and Slav Ukraine.
And Slav Ukrainian. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And I gotta say, hopefully everything will end up being okay. I'd hope. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from KJ Kinetics, and thank you very much, KJ, for that 10. He said, long-time lurker and first-time super chat. And also, thank you, by the way. He said, Congress quietly moved to integrate the U.S. and Israeli militaries using 2027 NDAA, an analysis by a particular fellow here on Washington Politics, LLT, LSA, and keep doing good work, guys. And is that true? Is that true, by the way? Because just so everybody knows this, by the way, while Israel is an ally of the United States, in technicality, the Israelis are not trusted when it comes to having access to certain government facilities. They're not allowed in our intelligence buildings because there's a huge risk of counterintelligence with the Israelis and things like that. So that would be quite interesting if they did that, because Israel, their military obviously is useful in the Middle East, which is all the way around the world. So I'm not sure why we'd be teaming up or, integrating militaries, but I'm not sure if that's true. Enforcer, have you heard?
I haven't heard of that. I would have to say generally that's probably not actual legal thing that you can work off of, because that doesn't really seem like that would ever work, or would it ever be able to work under the legal framework of the United States. So I would have to say generally, I don't know if that's true or not, but I'll have to look into it. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Kingsley, who said, have a coffee on me and long live the LSA. And why are so many channels on YouTube convinced that Russia is doing just fine, winning the war, and is about to mop the floor with NATO? They never actually say why.
Oh, because they're
I'll be
full of
curious to
shit.
know. I'll be curious to know who those channels are because if y'all didn't know this, I'm not sure if it's still the policy, but back when the Ukraine war started, YouTube did not take kindly to people talking good about Russia. Like that was actually something that they had, I think, created a temporary policy about. That if you were glazing the Russians or supporting the Russians, that was cause for a second look, to put it lightly.
Demonetization actually was the penalty back then. So I would say also that was really funny when that one guy got arrested in Russia or Kazakhstan or something. And they're like, "Tell us about how YouTube treats you poorly." Like he's like half this letter, man. Like I was like, oh, I was like, man.
Honestly, YouTube was baller for that though. It's like they, that's one move I was actually in agreement with YouTube on. It's like we shouldn't allow people to get on YouTube and start spreading Russian propaganda by the truckload. That certainly wouldn't have been a good thing. I actually like that policy.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent policy. But the reason why they never give any backing behind it is because it's full of shit. We can give a million different explanations on our channel, and we do all the time, as to why Russia's position would be bad here or they're doing poorly there, and we can actually explain it and tie it up in a nice bow with all of the causes and effects that lead to those sorts of outcomes. The Russian propagandists never can because it's living in a fantasy. And that's when you can always tell that somebody doesn't know what they're talking about, is if they can never explain why something is the way it is, and Russian propagandists can never explain why Russia is doing good or winning the war, because they're not, and there's nothing to point towards to prove it, because that proof does not exist. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and big thanks to you for support, and help with this channel to keep it running. But generally, I would say that I wouldn't listen to channels like that. I really, honestly, I would never listen to a channel that can never back up anything that they say with proof. Like, there's some channels out there that say things that sound really positive for America with Iran, like, the Iranian military walked into Hormuz and the military acted. If you see a headline like that and then you listen to their video and they basically have no proof for anything that they're saying, I would heavily discredit that and not listen to those channels again. I wouldn't listen to any channel that can never back up anything they say with proof or what sounds to be sound analysis. If that doesn't exist, that's not a credible channel. But a big thanks to you for support, and we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Kevin RM once again. And thank you, by the way, for that 10. He said, I mainly meant fallout by the stupidity of pre-war government.
Well, let's see. Pre-war government is in Iran, Ukraine. Which one? I'm trying to think of which one we're talking about here. Which war? I would say, I unfortunately wouldn't be able to know. I'd have to declare ignorance on that one because I don't know which war in particular that you're speaking of and the actions made leading up to it. But a big thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Truckin' Chef, and thank you very much, Truckin' Chef, for that support. He said, great information about the guns. I love it, and thank you, and appreciate it. And now I have more options, LOL, and awesome.
And a huge thanks to you for the support. And thank you so much for hearing us out and considering the options. And I hope that you do find yourself some very decent firearms. And so a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Truckin' Chef once again, and he said, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm not sure how expensive it is, but probably pretty expensive. But that would be a beautiful place to retire whenever I get there, LOL. And I actually checked out that place. That was on a list of places to look at. The thing that turned me off of it is there appears to be some loonies that live up in the mountains around that area. There appears to be some people that are holding on to some ideas that most Americans have left in the past, and they appear to be extremists that live out in the woods. And there was apparently an attack on firefighters somewhere out there in the forest or something by those loons. So that's the only thing that turned me off of the place. But it is pretty beautiful around there. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, that's when those like skinhead people did that ambush on the firemen by starting the wildfire, and then they all went up there to respond, and then they started trying to lay them low with rifle fire. I think they ended up killing a couple of firefighters actually. But that's something that I actually didn't know, folks, before we started to research Northern Idaho, because we actually were looking around up here. And not to say that everybody up here, in that area of Idaho is a part of this, but there were a lot, and I mean a load of these radical supremacist movements that hang out in the rural areas of northern Idaho. Don't know why that's where they hang out. You would think that'd be the southeast, but crazily enough, it's northern Idaho. So that was something I didn't really want to hang out around because that stuff is insane. It's just nuts. And also on top of that, living in that kind of environment. It's basically going from the frying pan, which is Alabama, and into the fire, which would be northern Idaho in that regard. And I'm not really that big of a fan of that sort of stuff. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Tom Exman. He said, how could he have ever thought of being attorneys? Honestly, looking back at it, I have the same thought, honestly. I really, that wasn't a profession for me. Like, I just should have known that up front. But there was a lot of family pressure and stuff going on and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that kind of led to that decision right there. But, well, luckily, though, I ended up on the right path, though. But, Enforcer, what say you?
Short answer for me, Matthew can tell you all this without a doubt. I never was a big fan of it. I was just kind of told that I had to do it or, kind of else. So I had to kind of go along with it. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Lemon Geyser. And thank you very much, Lemon Geyser, as well. They said, long live the Republic.
Indeed. Long live the Republic. And a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, by the way, I want to say this, folks. I don't mean to disparage the folks of northern Idaho, because I'm sure it's a really cool place. I've personally never been there. It's not everybody up there is a part of like some nutty white supremacist group or anything like that, but there is a decent presence of them up there compared to the rest of the nation statistically. So I don't want to tell y'all that like northern Idaho is like a no-go zone. It's just that, as far as those kinds of groups, there's a lot more of them up there than you'd find normally. So, not to say anything bad about Idaho. Whenever I'd been to Idaho, the only time I went, it seemed pretty nice. It wasn't a bad place, but it was mostly southern Idaho I was in. So, don't take that as a representation of all the folks up there. I'm sure there's a lot of nice people up there. It's just that there are a few people up there that are certainly not nice people. So I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
Our next one here goes to Pepsi Twist, who puts in a 5. They said, I hope you're having a good start to the weekend. And here's a Costco chicken for you two to share.
Oh, and thank you so much for the Costco chicken. I need to get myself one of those. I got to tell y'all, folks, I've just been dreading going to the store lately. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think Matthew is also in this mindset too. Something about going to the store lately just isn't vibing, Like, I just can't get in the mindset to go. But I need to, because I need to get some more silverware for my food and whatnot. So a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Washy Washer. He said, I guess I'm just kick back and watch King of the Hill and the Lakers again, shaking my head, 2001-9 era.
That was a pretty good time, You never realize the good times until they're gone. And when I was a kid, the 2000s wasn't a bad time at all. It was a good time, really. I have fond memories of the 2000s. 2010s, at least at the beginning, were kind of okay. And then like after that, it just started to go downhill. But a big thanks to you for support and help the show.
Man, that's upbeat as hell right there. Hey, after 2010, it just all went downhill. Anyways, all right then.
Oh man, life was good until the nuclear apocalypse. Anyways, but anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Sharp Gaming, who puts in the 5. He said, do you think we are in World War III or just close to it? And thanks for the work.
I think we're close to it. I don't think we're in it yet, but I think we're close to it. So a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Hoodoo, and thank you very much, Hoodoo, for that support. He said, NATO is allowing Russia to slowly defeat itself. Low risk, but at the expense of Ukraine, of course.
Kind of, but, still we have to put up some deterrence to save face. Like, the Russians blow up like 10 Romanians. We can't, like, sit back and then explain that away as, oh, well, that's fine because, the Ukrainians are beating the Russians eventually. Because that would be kind of like saying, oh, well, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, but that's fine because we still have the oil embargo on them, so eventually they'll suffer. It's kind of a similar mindset there. When direct action is taken against our alliance, we have to respond, otherwise we're weak. So I hope that addresses that well, and a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I also have a 5 from Gabriel Swanton, and thank you, Gabriel, for the 5. He said, love the stream, boys. And when, if Russia falls in the next 6 months, do you think they'll just be China's financial slave? And also, more of that voice.
And I gotta say a big thanks to you for the support, and I give you an honest answer. I'd say that within the next 6 months, they're probably going to become China's financial bitch. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. I'm going to stop that there because this nausea is getting rough. And I know what it is, Matthew. I know what it is. It's sugar sickness. I can feel it in my bones. I had too
Sugar
much.
sickness.
I had too much sugar today, and it's made me feel sick.
From what?
Well, I had some churros earlier today, and they were good. I didn't think they were that sweet, but I can feel it now in my stomach. Like, there's this kind of, like, I gotta explain this, folks, because this seems odd, but whenever I eat too much sugar, I start feeling physically sick. I don't know what it is about that. I don't have diabetes or anything, by the way, folks. I had my blood tested a while ago, and they were like, you're fine. But, it's just something about sugar. Like, if I eat too much of it, I just get physically sick feeling. And I can feel it in my stomach. It's the same feeling I get when I eat too much sugar. It's the churros. I've gotten sick from eating too much sugar today. That's definitely what it is. So, no more churros for me.
I get sick when I drink too much whiskey.
What?
You know, alcohol. Like, I get sick when I drink too much of that.
Sick in the head, or like, what do you mean?
You know, like whiskey. You know, like the stuff, like the cake batter.
I'm not understanding this.
You know, like you whisk the cake batter and stuff like that. They call it the whiskey.
I'm still not understanding. I never heard anyone call whisk, like, mixed cake.
You know, you whisk together. You know, like cake batter and stuff like that. You know, when you're making like cookies or cake. Yeah, they call it whiskey. Like that's what they call it. Like before you cook it.
I've never heard anyone say that in my life. Have any of y'all ever heard that before, folks?
Maybe they haven't. Maybe it's just something I'm referring to, by the way.
I think it is, man. I've never heard about that once in my life. I'm like, what the hell is this? But anyways, we're on to the next one.
Apparently nobody gets it. Apparently that was just something I was just always thinking, I guess.
I thought it was like insane here. I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm not understanding. And I was like, am I just not getting a joke? Am I like dense or something?
Man, somebody's bringing that Seinfeld joke that woman who was like the actor on Seinfeld is Elaine or whatever. They said, how do you relieve your stress? And somebody was like, oh, I'm like a Pisces. I'm blah 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 blah. And the other woman said, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. I drink to relieve stress. It's like, yeah, I wasn't talking about like real whiskey, like not like alcohol. I don't really drink like that, by the way. I don't really do that.
Yeah, I don't drink at all. Like the best I do, folks, the craziest I get is that every once in a while I might get a swig. But that's like going wild when I do that. What? Like a swig, from the soda shop.
I mean a soda?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant like a swig, like you just like had like a flask or something like that, and you're just taking a swig. I was about to say I hadn't heard about this.
Man, I'll wet my whistle, I'll wash it now. But anyway, so that we're on to the next one.
I got that cactus whiskey. They call him Buster Scruggs. No, but anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Adam, for that support. They said thank you for everything you do.
And thank you so much for enjoying everything we do and supporting it to help it to keep being a reality. And so with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Kevin. And thank you, Kevin, as well. He said that was literally the Death Star scene.
It honestly was. It really was. But a huge thanks to your support. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have here a support from none other than Adam McLean yet again, who put in a 5. He said, YouTube seems to think that it's our government, and it wants to regulate everything we type into live chat.
Honestly, that's wild on God. But a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one goes to Kevin, who puts in a 5. He said, just for the voices, they are top tier.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying the voices. And also, man, we're getting this one from Ross next, right?
Yes, we're getting this one from Ross next, but right now we're on Kevin.
Oh, good. I was just making sure. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have the 20 from Ross. And thank you, Ross, as well, for that 20 Australian, all the way from Australia, of course. That's where Australian money's come from, is Australia, people. But Ross said, hey there, myth-busting brothers of the Leaf Spring Army. Out of curiosity, what do your parents and extended family generally think of your War News stream? If you were my kids, I'd be super proud. There's no telling these days, to be honest with you. There's no telling. We're just happy that the general public loves it, but there's no telling. But unfortunately, what say you?
Oh, like it depended on the week, basically. But beyond that, I don't really know. Generally, I would actually assume, just being frank, probably negative outlook, because beyond like a fleeting statement every once in a while, generally never was a positive outlook on what we did. But a big thanks to you for support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Veman Guy. And thank you very much, good sir, as well for that 5. He said, get some alcohol wipes to smell on me. I used to help with nausea and seasickness when deployed. Honestly, like I've never really thought about that. I'm not sure about sniffing alcohol wipes, but that Pepto does work a number, I will say. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say I probably need some of that Pepto right now, because I got to tell y'all, folks, I'm breaking out in sweats over here from this stuff. Like, it's not good right now. It's not good at all. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that it's addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Slinger, and thank you very much, Slinger, for the $10 support. He said $15 too, $5 each, excuse me. He said, we love you a long time. Okay. He said, LSA, take one from the chat.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, that's crazy. But long live the Lead Spring RT. Huge thanks to you for support. We will make sure to get one from the live. So what do we got?
And the live chat goes to Campo, who said, should the U.S. government build bomb shelters and tunnels for citizenry? And do you think we will take hits stateside if Iran and Cuba escalate? Also, we have fallout shelters all over the place. So if you go to your local courthouse, the odds are you'll find a fallout shelter somewhere there. Most people don't know that, but there's fallout shelters all around America from the old days.
It's just that they don't have a capacity to be able to fit the whole population of the United States. It's like a very small percentage that those fallout shelters can account for, and also some of them are not maintained anymore by the Civil Defense Administration, which is the one who would be charged with their responsibility. But I would have to say that I would generally say, like, the fallout shelters can help, but I don't really think the government should subsidize the construction of them, because generally the fallout shelters are going to have a minimal impact on survivability, to be entirely honest. Like the thing about that is, how much of a return on investment is it? And once you get through the 2 weeks of radioactivity and you come back out of the fallout shelter, most everybody who still survived in a fallout shelter, they somehow did survive, they're going to end up dying within the next 2 years anyways, because of the harsh reality of post-nuclear exchange life. So I would actually have to say, not quite. Like, some countries invest in that heavily, but it probably wouldn't do all too much good in reality with how long the calamity would be and how bad it would be for the next few years after the fact. So big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Truckin' Chef. He said, Enforcer, when you end the conversation with how dare you, that is my favorite voice. Look at you with succulent something, how dare you, the best.
How dare you, sir? But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And I thank you for enjoying that, Truckin' Chef. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Zash yet again. And he said, Home Defense Mark 19 fully automatic grenade launcher. You know what? That sounds like a free ticket for a visit from some good old folks at the ATF. That sounds like a nice visit. They pay a visit to your house because they said, sir, are you lonely? They show up to your house and they pay you a visit, and they whip out a paper called a search warrant, and they said, let us in there. And you say, no. And then they say, get the hell out of the way. And then it turns out, get out of the way. They're coming in there to get that grenade launcher. Get the hell out of the way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I defend my home as the founding fathers intended. Y'all know that joke, right? Four ruffians break into my home. Have you seen that one before, Matthew?
4 ruffians break into your home. No, I haven't seen this one. What was this, like,
dude.
body cam footage?
No. It's a meme, because someone made a joke about, like, how the founding fathers intended for firearms rights and all that. So someone made a whole meme. They were like, I defend my home the way the founding fathers intended. 4 ruffians broke into my home. And it's like these guys dressed up in like 1700s clothes, like the little bandit masks on. And the guy's like, I jumped on top of my swivel gun on the top of the stairs and yelled, "Tally-o, lads!" I fired my gun and it blew their legs off or something. It was like an insane, like, whole meme thing. But I protect my home as the founding fathers intended, to go with the joke. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Vito, and thank you for that support as well. He said, have you ever heard of the burning of the Gatsby, also called the Gatsby Affair, June 9th, will be 254 years.
I've never heard of that, actually. I'll have to look into that, Vito. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from TG TV Tank Mode, who said, how nervous are you guys when we have to fight in the Strait? Also, thoughts on Abraham Accords that the president is trying to do with the Arab countries. Honestly, we shouldn't have anything to do with the Abraham Accords. Honestly, that's something that Israel's pushing, and that should be something that they fool with. I don't know why we're jumping in the middle of that, like trying to be like the personal representative of Israel. I'm actually kind of nervous about the fight in the Strait. Like, it's necessary, but I'm a little bit shaky about it just because of how risky it is. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to agree with that on the Strait. And also, one second, folks. Also, I would say that as far as the Abraham Accords, that's one way to get everyone in the Middle East adamantly in unison of hating the United States and Israel, because I have not seen a single soul largely in the Middle East be a big fan of the Abraham Accords, except for Israel. So clearly we shouldn't be trying to push that on everyone else, because they're going to say no, and if we keep trying to press the matter, they're only going to get more incensed and angry about it. So big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Planting. He said, so no sign of peace. Please get us on track. People's thoughts?
It doesn't really appear that we have any signs of peace coming around the corner, unfortunately, at least at the moment. So big thanks to you for support, and we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, who said, could NATO's inaction be due to not wanting to give Putin the satisfaction of trying to find a reasonable defeat through NATO and not Ukraine alone?
Maybe, but generally though, it's also a pretty significant sign of weakness. It would be like, say, like, like a Mexican cartel just blowing up a couple of people in Houston with a drone, and, the U.S. government did nothing. How would that look? It wouldn't look good on us. So, that's generally my kind of an outlook. It doesn't really matter if there's a larger strategy going in at play. It's the fact that a nation has a social contract with its citizens to defend them. And so, considering that the citizens were almost killed yesterday in Galati, there has to be some form of a response in some form by Romania beyond what they've done. So, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Dylan Burris, and thank you, by the way. They said, can you show the comparison of the United States and Russia and China and Europe and Iran? Who's more dominant geographically?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, like, everyone else is just regionally based. Like, Europe is in their region, China is in East Asia, Russia's Russia. The United States, power-wise, is the only one that power projects globally. Can China field a fighting force in 48 hours in South America? No. Can the U.S.? Yes. Can the U.S. field a fighting force in East Asia in 48 hours versus the Chinese? Yes. Can China? Yes, they can. Can China do that in the Middle East? No. Can we? Yes. We can do that anywhere and everywhere in the world. No other group or no other power in the world can do what we do in terms of global power projection. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from none other than Crispy, and thank you very much, Crispy, for the 10. He did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate support, as always, from Crispy. We also have a 10 from Slinger, who put in another super chat and said, this may be treading the line of topics that can't be discussed, but could you two tell us how Christianity in the United States ties heavily into our politics and geopolitics? Thank you, and LSA.
And I thank you for the support, and generally the answer to that should be that it doesn't really have any sway or any impact at all, because the United States is founded as an Enlightenment-era government, and Enlightenment-era governments particularly moved theological matters outside of the confines and actions of the government. That's specifically laid out in the First Amendment of the Constitution, of the Constitutional Convention, which happened, let's see, how long would that have been? That would have been 11 years after the Declaration of Independence. And generally, it has some impact, like, in the modern day, but I personally have to say I find that to be a perversion of the way that this republic was supposed to be operated, because the nation was never supposed to operate, and never did operate, off of any sort of religious parameters. And before people start saying left and right in the chat that it did, and it was a Christian country and all of that, and it was only for Christians, back in the day, Christians hated other Christians as much as nowadays Christians hate, like some Christians hate people of Islam and some people of Islam hate Christians. It was like that back then for Christians. The Anglicans hated the German Lutherans. The Lutherans and the Anglicans hated the Catholics. The Catholics hated all of them. All of the others hated the damn Orthodox folks of Eastern Europe. They all hated each other. Well, let me ask you all this, folks. Did the Puritans come to America because the British loved them or because they hated them? They hated them. The Puritans were outcasts in Britain by the time they created the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Here's another question. Maryland is a Catholic state by design, by its charter that was given to it by the king. Why in the world is that? It's because Britain at the time was an Anglican country, and Anglicans be damned if they ever see Catholics inside of England. And so they said, we are going to expel all the Catholics, and the Catholics can go and find safe refuge in the colony of Maryland. And then you had the Quakers of Pennsylvania, and then you had the Baptists and the Anabaptists of the South, and then you also had all of the other groups as well. And so the nation was founded with the idea, because back then different Christian theologies were completely, entirely separate religions as far as they viewed it. They said the government should have no say in religious matters, and so it will be by law that they cannot support any religion over the other. They must instead remain entirely removed from religion. And so nowadays a lot of people make it all about religion, about what is the government supposed to, I just say, like, as far as its relationship, it's a pretty in-depth one nowadays, and I think that discussion itself would get political, but my basic, kind of like boiled down answer is that it shouldn't have any design or involvement in government, because it by design it should never be involved in the government. And that's it's something that I generally don't agree with these days, is that how much people try and force that into the conversation. And then a lot of those people never think farther beyond their noses of, well, if it become a theological country, what sector theology of Christianity does it enforce now? Because it's not going to be all of them. The government's always specific, and it has to have clear confines as to what will be Christianity and what wouldn't be. And in my opinion, that's none of the government's business to tell me how to be a Christian or not, me personally. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Otani Sanji, and thank you very much, Otani, as well, for the 5. They said, great stream as always, very insightful, and sad looking at the map most often pulled up is particularly the Aral Sea and how it has disappeared.
It really is a shame. That was Soviet irrigation policies back in the day that killed the Aral Sea. You can actually still see that a lot of that water is still diverted into this valley down here to be able to grow cotton and other products in the region. So a very unfortunate thing. I wish they'd fix it, because the Aral Sea was once a landmark of the region. It was written about heavily in the Middle Ages even, and now it doesn't even really exist beyond a couple of small lakes. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 3 from Kevin, and thank you very much, Kevin, for the 3. He said, just for the guy who said it's stupid. And honestly, that guy right there, I'm telling you, it's crazy. Like, some people come here, like, I get if some people don't like the stream, but it's like, you don't have to stay. It's like, and also you don't have to make a nasty comment on the way out either. So if they don't like it, they can just leave. But thank you very much, Kevin, for that $3 support.
Man, honestly, man, sometimes when those people come in, man, I feel like that one guy, man, he was at that, like, Nashville thing, and that guy said, your hat says this, and it should say this, and the guy went, ooh, got me, got him. Really, honestly, man, that's how it feels.
Yeah, for real, honestly. It's like, I've never understood that. Like, if I don't like other people's stream and stuff like that, it's like, I don't say anything. I just don't watch it. That's just like the respectful thing to do. Like, you don't have to enjoy everything that everybody does. It's, everybody's not going to like everything, but you don't have to come in and be presumptuous and make a nasty comment. I don't do that to other people, and I don't understand why other people feel like that's their right to do that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Like, well, I obviously would agree. I mean, I run the show as well. Like, we would both agree. But also on top of that, it's like, these people think they're doing something. It's like, telling us that we suck. It's like, beyond you feeling like you've done something, it's not like the show's going to stop tomorrow because someone said we suck. It's like it's going to keep going. So if you don't like it, it's better to just quietly exit, because who knows, maybe one day you'll want to come back and enjoy the show, and now you're banned. So it's like you're not really producing anything of benefit. You're hurting yourself by doing that. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 100 Australian from Ross. And thank you very much, Ross, for the 100 Australian. Also, an extremely generous support, by the way. And that is his second one of the night. And we do generously appreciate that generous support. But he said, thanks for your honesty before. Family can be tricky, especially when their kids drop out of college or university. I did that and worked as a film projectionist for 15 years before I went for a corporate job. And family is happy now, less so me. And follow your dreams, fellows.
And I thank you so much for that unbelievably massive support, Ross. And I would say that our kind of a situation, not to get too much into it, because I personally like to kind of, I think about it, but I believe it behind, but it's a little bit different than that. But I would definitely say that following your own dreams, and especially, folks, being your own person and not letting other people try and run your life for you and make you feel 2 inches tall no matter what you do. And no matter what you do, it's never good enough. Don't ever be around those people. It doesn't matter who they are to you, or what they were, or what they claim to be, or how you're doing them wrong by basically just trying to be yourself when that has no impact on them. Don't be around those people. They're going to drag you down. They're going to make your life miserable and basically puppet your own life at the expense of your own happiness and your own virtues for the benefit of themselves, when at the end of it all, no one stands to benefit in that kind of a relationship. So I got to thank you amazingly for that support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And we wouldn't be able to keep it running and rolling through all of the stuff that's happened over the years that has led us to where we are today. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
And also a huge shout out to Ross once again. And we also have a $5 support from Can of Juice. And thank you very much for the support. They say, got my first paycheck this week. Figured I would give some to the people that get me through my work nights in LSA.
Oh wow, congrats. That's really cool to hear. First paycheck. It's the first of many. And remember, if you've picked something that you truly love and you have a great passion for it and you work hard at it, you never look at a day of work as a day of work because you love the job so much, you will make it far. Like that's the story of us. I don't know if that's really just pure luck. And to be honest, I'm a rather lucky person. Like man, you can tell y'all, I don't know how it works. Sometimes I'm just exceptionally lucky. But I'm a really lucky person, so I don't know if this was just luck or if we worked really hard and it succeeded because of that. I'm not entirely sure. But at least that's been our story, is working hard, at least in my mind, and making it here. And I'm sure that everyone else can make it the same. So I hope that your paychecks grow in size and that your devotion and motivation to work also grows with it. So a huge thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from JK Makes, and thank you as well, JK, for that 10. They said it is more accurate to say the Seattle Metro is more left-leaning, but people don't know that eastern Washington, south and north of Seattle are all conservative. And it's really not about which political leaning. It's more about common sense, because you can go places that are left-leaning or right-leaning, and sometimes people could completely lack common sense. So I've seen both of the extremes. I've seen both of them. So I don't really associate a lack of common sense with the political party necessarily. But in Seattle, there seems to be a little bit of common sense lacking there, at least in the local governance of the place. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would actually have to say that I have a little bit of a different opinion on that. I generally say that the lack of sense does come with a very significant political leaning. Because if you ever go anywhere, folks, and I mean literally anywhere, where it's basically like 70% or more of the people in that area lean left or right, it basically becomes an echo chamber of policies that end up becoming destructive to the point of idiocy, because they believe that pursuing policy, like at the end of it all, these parties are adamant on pursuing policy and implementing them. And it's an endless, voracious cycle of just implementing more policies that go further down their ideological path, whether they make sense or not. And that's what you would find in Alabama, is that they would go so far down the right-leaning political path that they would just start getting into this crazy, like, echo chamber of creating crazier and crazier laws that would either be more draconian or just more senseless. And you find that same sort of a thing in really hard left places where most of the population leans that way, in a similar sort of a vein, but it goes in the opposite direction. And that's why I have to say, folks, again, that's why I love Salt Lake City, because while there's a lot of right-leaning and left-leaning people in the city, they don't really fall within the political framework of the rest of the country. country, and also they kind of end up balancing themselves out to where you don't go too far left or right down insanity, and you kind of keep it in a reasonable medium where reality is what's actually on the table and what's being considered and argued and implemented, instead of just crazier ideological concepts from both sides that just start getting pushed because there's no one giving any pushback to it. So I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Kay, who said 2-tier Kier mentioned NATO today, UK at war. I bet he did. I bet he did. It was probably one of those best wishes statements right there. But thank you very much, Kay, for that $2 support. We also have a 2 from Bob Dobbs. He said, I'm tired, boss. I'm tired.
Oh, we are too. Like, believe me, I'm so sorry we had to keep reporting news like this to all of y'all. I know it's exhausting. It's exhausting to us. Hopefully it'll all turn around and things will get better sometime soon. But a huge thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Plazoth, who said LSA and take one from the chat.
Hey, we will make sure to. So what do we got from the chat?
And the one from the chat is going to go to none other than Judy from the live chat. He said, what can the U.S. do and why haven't they done it before?
On what in particular?
On Iran.
Oh, I was like on Ukraine, on Iran, on Taiwan. On Iran, what we could do is we could militarily reopen the Strait, which we have not done yet. So I hope that does answer that question well. And a big thanks to you for the support. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Go-Kart, who puts in a 2 and said, you guys rock my sock.
Oh, and thank you so much for the kind words, Go-Kart. And thank you for helping the channel to keep rolling. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Adam McLean, who said, face it, Russia is absolutely screwed.
Oh, yeah, they definitely are, without a doubt. And a big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
A big shout out as well to Shannon Newman, who put in a 2 and said, hi to the LSA.
And a big hello to you, and a big shout out to the rest of the LSA on your behalf, Shannon Newman. I hope all of you all have been doing well tonight. Beyond me feeling sick from the sugar that I ate earlier, I'm doing pretty good, actually. I've been having a blast on this show. So a big thanks to you for support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 1 from Miki Subzuni as well. And I have a feeling I'm butchering your name, but I hope you understand that this is not my strong suit. But we do appreciate $1 support. He said, how can Russia threaten nuclear war if they haven't ever had the money to replace the tritium in their warheads or even do basic maintenance?
That's a great question. And we think that while a lot of their nuclear weapons are certainly not operational, I'm also thinking that at the same time, there is certainly, without a doubt, some operational nuclear weapons that they have been able to maintain. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 19-pound donation from Koloy. And thank you very much, Koloy, for the 19-pound. We do appreciate that. He said, I love the streams. WLSA. And what do you think of the UK going independent from the US with their nuclear deterrence?
I thought that was already the case. I was pretty sure Britain had its own nuclear deterrent for its own national security. I'll have to look into that and do some research because that's generally how I understood their nuclear posture to be up until now. I would say that it doesn't really change much of anything for either group, really, to be honest, because Britain still has their 400 nuclear warheads. We still have our several thousand. And generally, the nuclear deterrence is strong enough for both that they'll never be threatened individually with any existential threat because it'll result in whoever did that being nuked into oblivion, whether it be Britain or the United States. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a humongous thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Taoist Auditor, and thank you very much, Taoist Auditor, as well. He said, off to see the Aral Sea in 2 months and taking my mum, as we haven't done Central Asia before.
Oh, that's interesting. I hope y'all stay safe out there. It's an interesting place for certain, but you always have to be careful. The governments out there can kind of be a little iffy, you know. So make sure to be careful with that. But that will be pretty neat to see the Aral Sea. Like this is what it looks like out there.
Be careful. The police are everywhere.
But beware, the police are everywhere. Man, that's what he said. I mean, he did say, be careful. The police are everywhere. He said, beware.
Beware.
The police
Watch
are
out for those police, those law enforcement. What was he doing? Something he was scared of being found out of or something?
No, I remember he was trying to get, like, Flavius Maximus into, like, that city and all, with the Kirk and all of them.
He was trying to hide something. I mean, why would they not want to be surveilled unless they have something to hide?
Man, that guy in the Roman world, man, like the Roman police showed up and said, "All right, Crassius, show us what you got." He said, "Man, F you, pig." Man, it's like, bro, it's like, dude, this guy like real. He's slinging lead out here in the Roman world on Star Trek. But anyways, make sure to be careful out there though, because a lot of the Central Asian countries are neat, but always make sure to not photograph police vehicles, military equipment, or anything like that. Most of these countries in Central Asia, because of their post-Soviet sort of culture, they usually look at foreigners taking pictures of any kind of police or military equipment without explicitly asking them permission. And even with that, you got to be very careful about asking them for permission even. Usually they start to look at people as possibly being foreign spies, and you could be detained and harassed for a while. So just make sure to be really careful about that kind of stuff. Don't take pictures of any of that, because that could, like, they're not going to, most of the time they're not going to throw you in the slammer, but it's going to be a very unpleasant sort of an experience. So just make sure to be careful of that. But outside of that, it should be a pretty fun time. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that is actually our last super chat to address. So a huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel tonight with those super chats. And of course, that does keep the channel running. So we do very much appreciate that, by the way. And it's now time to get some live chat questions and our Morse code decoders. And jumping right into the Morse, we had Paul, Kevin, Kevin Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Royal Fluffiness, Kush, Commentary, Sire, and Brian. And so the Morse code says, maybe the U.S. is finally about to do something about the Strait. I hope. LLT, LSA.
And it, and that is the sound of money. I got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all greatly on getting that correct time and time again. Truly an amazing and profound thing to see that y'all continue to get that correct for the entirety of the LSA, thanks to none other than the great folks of the Lee Springer Mystical Corps. And with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the final 3 questions of the night, due to us going overtime and also me feeling somewhat unwell. And so with that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
All right. Excuse me. This one, I just accidentally hit the soundboard when I
Bro,
did that.
I was about to say, I was not going to mention that, but I was like, dude, that's wild, man. I was like,
man, I was like going to reach back. I was trying to press the mute button, and I smashed the soundboard button instead of the mute button. I was trying to cover that up. But anyways, jumping into our first live chat question here. This one goes to none other than Bob. He said, my question is Russia provoking the EU, NATO to draw them in and get them to respond militarily in order to get China involved in what could be World War III? Also, by the way, I did not just pass the wind on the air, by the way. That was the duck sound from the soundboard, so make that clear.
I would have to answer that question as in, I doubt that. I have a feeling that they're trying to provoke the NATO states and push it as far as they can. But beyond that, I don't think they're trying to instigate World War III, because there's really no benefit for them if they did that. There's a benefit, however, in trying to pressure NATO into giving them concessions or scaring NATO away from supporting Ukraine to try and make the war easier for Russia. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we actually have another super chat. What do we got, Matthew?
So this one goes to none other than Slow Sparks. And thank you very much, Slow Sparks, for that super sticker right there of the YouTube lemon creature really holding on to Yoshi, or that one right there, the green one. And thank you very much, Slow Sparks, for that $50 support. We do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta give you a huge shout out, Slow Sparks. That lemon and lime looking real cute right now. A little acting crazy and silly. They don't even care no more. And I gotta thank you so much once again for that support, because folks like you make this channel possible and keep it running. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
It is really remarkable after you think about it. It's like occasionally, like seeing Slow Sparks support there. It's wild that our channel has generally sustained itself primarily off of viewer support only for this long, like for 4 years, because we don't run ads like we always say all the time. We don't run ads on our live streams. We've occasionally run some ads, like some sponsorships on our short war videos, but we've generally put that by the wayside in the recent year or so, because we really don't like doing sponsors very much. But it is crazy though that thanks to everybody supporting the channel so generously like that, like Slow Sparks and all of our other super chatters, that it literally has made it possible to do this as a full-time job over the years. It's really truly wild, and also we're very grateful.
I would have to agree. We're extremely grateful for it, and it's even crazier, folks, when you look at something like this. we were number 25 in America yesterday. You know, like I gotta say, folks, that we kind of like, I think Matthew and me, we kind of take it for granted a little bit, but we still greatly appreciated that the channel has gotten to where it is these days. Because I remember, folks, a long time ago, 1,556 days ago, this channel started covering the news. And I remember I was being told by some people that it was never going to go anywhere. It was going to fall flat and die. Just completely pointless. Only idiots do this sort of a thing. And 1,556 days later, they were wrong, and we're still here. And I think that's actually something crazy to think about, because y'all would not even know. I've never gotten into that on my side, especially during the first month that the channel was running, but before even Enforcer Matt came on. But there was a lot of pushback behind the scenes, like an insane amount of it, about doing this, and how like losers do it, and you're going to be a bum and everything. And it was like nothing but I was having to fight everything behind the scenes to try and keep the thing on air, to not have external influences try and force me off of the air, to keep the thing running. And then Matthew came on, and then we kept it going, and now it's, you know, it's where it is today. It's really crazy to think about that, because it feels like eons ago, but in reality that wasn't all too long ago, just 4 or 5 years ago at this point that happened. And, you know, eventually it turned into this. So, you know, I'm very happy and proud of where we've made it, because it's been a long road, folks, and it's crazy to think we've made it all the way to here. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support and help this channel to keep on running once again, Slow Sparks. And with that, we are on, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to the final question of the night. And so, who is the last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer, also, by the way, I see people saying almost 600,000 subs, like Miss Disa said that. It's a slow crawl to 600,000. Like, for whatever reason, I think people are getting out during the summer. That's my excuse, by the way. I'm not totally sure. It seems like a lot of geopolitical channels right now are struggling to gain subscribers. It might be because YouTube's not pushing the channels like they were, because the news isn't really making mega headlines right now. But if something crazy happens, that subscriber number is going to grow quite a bit, I would imagine. But anyways, though, we're getting close. I think we're 1,000 off from it at this point, just about. We're almost at 599 as of tonight. But moving into our last question of the night, this one is going to go to none other than Slamina Evil, who said, do you think the reason why the U.S. suddenly may intend to actually break the Iranian blockade is because of that recent drone incident?
It might be. I also think that it's probably because they're just having to face the music that if this doesn't change, there's going to be an economic depression in the United States and the West, and that's not going to do well for the midterms. So now they got to reopen it, because if they don't, things are going to be getting way worse. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say humongous thanks to everybody so much once again for watching. We've had 17.1 thousand people here at the peak, and 136,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to each and every single one of y'all once again for enjoying this show, and of course, making sure to watch the entire thing. 8.5 thousand of y'all are still here. That's absolutely unbelievable. And we thank y'all for sticking around with us for almost 4 hours now to listen to the news and all the questions. And so with that in mind, folks, we will be seeing you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And hopefully I'll be feeling better tomorrow, because if anyone has to make a short war video tomorrow, it's me, because it's my day. So with that, we will see you all tomorrow. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the East Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we appreciate you all for once again joining us tonight on the long war news stream. Of course, I almost lost what I was trying to say there. I don't know why it is, but these days, like when it comes to the outro, my mind goes blank at this point. I don't know why it is, but a huge shout out to the 135,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream. We will see you tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern once again for the next Nightly War News stream, and maybe the Enforcer will put out a short war video tomorrow. Thankfully, whether or not he's feeling good or not, I tell you, he's still got to do it anyway. He's still got to do it, because that's the way we work around here. He's doing it anyway. He doesn't get days off. He doesn't have days off. No sick days, no PTO, and no requesting it either. Hey, he's doing it anyway. Okay, that's the way it works. I'm joking, by the way. If he's foul or something like that, he can toss it to me. That's the way it works. If it's one of our video days and somebody's fouled up or just doesn't have it in them that day to do it, then they toss it to the next one. So I'm always available.
He's like, it's going to be me. It's like, man.
I'm always always itching for a short war video. I must say, I'm always kind of nearby. Like some days, I'll give you all behind the scenes real quick before I round it out. Some days I'll text him. I'll be like, "Have you got this video today?" Because I'll see the news is juicy. I'll be like, "This is a good video coming out today," and I'll wait for him. 10 minutes later, he'll be like, "Yeah, I'm making it." I'll be like, "Dang it!" I was like, I was hoping he was gonna say he wasn't gonna make it because I wanted to make that video. But anyway, so we'll see you all tomorrow, nonetheless. And of course, thank you all once again. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava. Get some rest and good night.